Hey guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well and ready for some more OJ. It's early. So we really can get a good chunk of OJ done today, way more than we normally do, like 30 minutes or more than we normally do. Woohoo! At 1.25 speed. Let's go. Let's press play. Oh, you can't see that. There
Technical
we
note
go.
by a
There we go.
T.E. Yeshian, Y-E-S-H-I-O-N, titled Thermal Degradation of Erythrocyte Acid Phosphatase Isoenzymes in a Case Sample.
I read that one the other day, yes.
And Andy, you appear to be that article.
Yes, it appears to be.
And have you reviewed and considered an article by R.A. Fisher and Harry Harris titled Studies on the Separate Isoenzymes of Red Cell Acid Phosphatase Phenotypes A and B?
And I'd like to see it, please. This one does not look familiar to me. Just take it.
Now, other than the Grunbaum article, incidentally, let me show you a copy of that and ask if this is the article that you testified about the other day.
Yes, it appears to be.
Other than the Raxall article, the Yeshian article, the Grunbaum article, and the Sensibar article, are there any other scientific articles that you have reviewed specifically to look for how a BA degrades
It's Vegas time.
Overruled.
in preparation for this case?
I believe I mentioned two other references, something that is commonly called source book and another a textbook by Safferstein.
And I was talking about articles devoted to that topic specifically rather than textbooks.
Oh, I'm sorry. To the best of my recollection, that's it.
Okay. What do those articles say about the rate at which a BA degrades?
Rate meaning the amount of time it takes? Or
No. Which bands disappear first?
most of the articles make reference to the fact that degradation does in fact occur, and that as a rule, it tends to go from the anodal or the faster bands down towards the cathodal or slower bands.
Would you agree that those articles stand for the proposition that at the first stage of degradation, you lose the A2 band?
It's overbroad as to those articles.
Sustained.
The articles we've been talking about.
It's still overbroad.
Sustained.
Sensibar, Zajac, Yeshian, and Raxall. Those four articles. Would you agree that the results of their scientific tests are that the first thing to disappear is the A2?
Assumes that they all did scientific tests backed on numbers.
Overruled.
They do tend to point out that the most labile or the first one to go is in fact that fastest
Next
A2
slide.
band.
I'm sorry, next slide. This is E. So after that first stage of degradation, your BA is going to look like the right-hand column of slide T, according to the scientific literature, correct? This scientific literature.
According to those articles, that's the degradation route that they have seen.
Now, those articles also state, do they not, that the next stage of degradation is you lose the V2 band.
Well, it assumes that there's only one degradation route back on numbers.
Overruled. This is in reference to these articles.
Yes.
That's the general route that those articles reference, yes.
Okay, the next slide, please. This is what? You. So would you agree, would you not, that these articles indicate that the next stage of degradation you would see, if you had a BA that was degraded, you would see two bands, the B1 and the A1 band.
Under the conditions that those studies were run in, yes, that is the general route of degradation.
Now, those studies further indicate, do they not, that the next thing to go when it degrades is the A1 band, correct?
That's the general route of that form of degradation, yes.
Next slide, please. So therefore, according to these articles, a BA that's degrading will ultimately, before the last band disappears, have a B1 band there, correct?
Again, according to the conditions that those samples are treated and under the conditions they were run, that is the degradation route that's referred to.
Agree that under that degradation route, you never have the pattern of a BA that's degraded that has both the B1 and the B2 bands without the A1 band.
Again, given the things I mentioned before, the condition of the samples in those studies, and the system they used for identifying it, that is true.
And in this case, your test results showed both the B1 and the B2 band without the A1 band, didn't they?
That's correct.
So under this scientific literature, if this BA was a degraded, I'm sorry, if your B under the fingernails was a degraded BA, it wouldn't look like the results you got, would it?
If my sample or the samples that I analyzed were under those conditions in those studies and run in the same way, that's correct.
Can you cite me to a single scientific article that states that the degradation route taken by a BA when it degrades would ever get you to the point where you're going to have a B1 and a B2 without the A1?
And we're talking specifically about articles at this point.
Yes.
No, I cannot.
I think you said also, let me turn that off now. Now, none of those articles that we've talked about, the reason cited in those articles for doing these studies is to find out how a BA degrades, correct? So that was one of the purposes of all these articles.
Well, it's known that it does degrade. So yes, the purpose of those articles, potentially among other things, because they include other bits of information, is to determine one of the ways that a EAP will degrade.
And all of those articles talk about you could misinterpret a BA or B. I'm sorry, you could misinterpret a BA for a B if you made a reading based on just that B1 band at the end, correct?
That's correct.
And they all say that, therefore, you shouldn't make any reading at all if all you have is one B1 band, correct?
That's correct.
But they say also that you will not have a mistyping where you have a B1 and a B2 band because that would not be a degraded BA, correct?
I don't believe they all say that, no.
Can you show me one that doesn't say that?
It's going to take me a few minutes to look. I believe they say that are things that may happen, but
Well, counsel, let's move on. We're not going to sit here and read articles.
They do say that you can accurately read a BA and a B as long as there are two bands present. In other words, you can read a B if there are two bands present accurately, correct?
It's incomplete as to what conditions.
It's the same. Actually, when you say they, I think you
In
need
the-
to specify which articles.
Do any of the articles say that you should not call a B where you have both the B1 and B2 bands?
no, they don't.
Do they all say that you shouldn't make any call at all if you only have one band?
It's my understanding, yes.
Now, you also testified that item 42 had the same appearance, or the same reading as the fingernails, correct?
No, I don't believe I said they had the same reading or the same appearance.
Can we go back to slide A? Now, you recognize slide A up there as being the one we were talking about with the standard?
Yes, I do.
Would you agree that the lane next to the standard that we used, in fact, why don't you go to the next slide, slide B, that the lane just to the right of the standard lane is item, I'm sorry, actually it's to the left of the box is item 42.
Yes, adjacent to the other standard.
Now, let me show you a photograph. Does this appear to be a photograph of that same electrophotogram?
Yes, it does. It appears to be an enlargement of it.
And item 42 appears in that electrophotogram as it does in the slide on the projector, correct?
I was in the same location, and it's much easier to read in this photograph.
Now you can pick up a little bit more in the photograph than you can on the slide, correct?
Object to the phrase a little bit more.
Rephrase it.
You can see some very, very faint banding patterns under 42. It doesn't completely show up in the slide, correct?
That's correct.
Maybe we could try to put this on Elmo.
I think that's when we may have to have both up and have the jury look at the blow up.
That's fine. Can we try this?
Well, yeah, I'll try it, but I just trying to save some time here.
In fact, let me. Okay. We can see a little bit better this way. Would you agree?
A little bit better.
And would you agree that the lane for item 42 appears to have three very faint bands corresponding to B1, A1, and B2? Very faint.
Well, the B1 and B2, I believe I can see what are banding areas, very kind of fuzzy, difficult to read. There is kind of a brightish cloud in the A1 region.
And the photograph is 1141 A1. Now the very faint, can you see behind you on the screen up there? The very faint fuzzy A1 band is what I've got the light on, correct?
That mistakes the evidence.
Well-
Well,
Right about there?
well, there is some fluorescence in that area. It's not even really what I would call a band.
It's not, and that's one of the reasons that this wasn't inconclusive is because those are not sufficiently well-defined bands to really make a type on, correct?
Those is overbroad.
Overall.
Which of the
The faint markings you see in lane 42.
It was called inconclusive, right? Because the bands that I visualized in there just were not what I would call clear-cut bands.
And let me show you a photograph of the fingernail slide that appear to be a similar photograph.
Yes, it does.
And this would be 1141 J1. And I'd like to put both of these on at the same time. But now, you see the two photographs that we have on the projector.
Yes, I do.
And the 42, again, is the one that I have the laser light on now up on the big projector. Can you see that behind
I'm
you?
sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the light that I'm using on the large projector up above you is the 42 lane, correct?
Yes, it is.
And the lanes over here, oh, good, we've got the arrow. Can we move the arrow over to 84A and B? Right there. Those are the banding patterns from the fingernails, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And can we put an arrow over by 42 as well? Can you affix one there? Would you agree that the banding patterns for 84A and B are much more distinctive than 42?
Yes.
And that's why you read 84A and B and did not report anything other than inconclusive for 42.
It's one of the reasons, yes.
Print of items 42 and 84. It was the two electrophoretograms of 42 and 84 side by side with arrows.
Now, your testimony the other day about 42 was to the effect that since 42 was preserved under similar conditions to 84A and B, therefore you can draw some kind of an analogy between the results of 42 and the results of 84, correct?
mistakes the testimony.
Overall.
I believe environmental conditions and the like was one of the things that we mentioned that is used in the total consideration of everything.
Now, one of the the photographs that you looked at of Nicole Brown Simpson showed one of her hands under her body and one of her hands up exposed to the air, correct?
Yes,
So those two were not under the same conditions in terms of drying or being in a pool of blood, were they?
not exactly the same, no.
And would you agree that if you follow the scientific literature that I've shown to you and that you've reviewed, that the blood under Nicole Brown Simpson's fingernails cannot be a BA?
It's an improper hypothetical.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, could you read that or repeat that, please?
Would you agree that under the scientific literature that we've reviewed here, that the blood under Nicole Brown Simpson's fingernails cannot be a degraded BA?
If you look strictly at the literature and if the conditions under the fingernails are the same as the way the studies were done in the literature and the technique used to identify it was the same as that I used in my testing, then it does not follow that degradation route. That's correct.
And if that's true, then it has to come from somebody else, correct?
Improper hypothetical.
Overruled.
Given all of the considerations that I mentioned, they would all have to be the same. And if, like I said, in fact, it did follow that same degradation route, then it would have to be a B and it would have to come from somebody else.
Now, if you have test results that you think might be wrong or ambiguous, what are you supposed to do as a scientist?
I would not report them if they are wrong or ambiguous.
If you thought that the results were wrong, would you redo the test?
Depends on what other tests were available to me.
Now, looking at EAP, well, if you do a PGM test or a DNA test, you're not looking at the same things as you're looking at an EAP, are you?
You're potentially looking at the same thing, but there are other factors. That's correct.
Nothing that you do other than an EAP test is going to give you an EAP reading, correct?
Oh, that's correct. Yes. I mean, only an EAP test is going to give you an EAP result.
So the only way that you could double check that EAP test would be to do another EAP test, correct?
Well, theoretically, if they knew what caused the EAP type at the DNA level, you could do it that way. I don't believe there's a standard test for that right now. So the only way to reconfirm that result would be to run the exact same test again.
These fingernail scrapings were sent back to you by the Department of Justice for the purposes of doing another EAP test, weren't they?
That states the testimony.
Still sustained.
At some point, you sent them to DOJ and they sent them back, didn't they?
Yes, that's true.
What was the purpose for them sending it back?
Because it's our evidence. The evidence belongs back here when they're done completing it so that it can become part of the rest of the case.
Did you ever consider doing a retest of those fingernail scrapings, an EAP test, to see whether your original results were wrong?
Did I consider it?
Yes.
I considered it, yes.
You wanted to do it, didn't you?
I felt that there was other tests that could give more information. I did not want to consume any more of the sample just to repeat the exact same thing again.
So you've done no retesting to demonstrate whether this EAP is anything other than a B or someone other than Mr. Simpson, correct?
There has never been any other testing. I have not repeated or done any other EAP testing. That's correct.
No further questions.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the morning session. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you. Do not conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. We'll stand in recess till 1 o'clock. All right, Mr. Goldberg, you had some comment or concern regarding discovery matters?
Yes, Your Honor. On the photographs that counsel used today,
Surely we can't have a discovery issue. Surely we can't. Trial already started, so shouldn't have any discovery issues.
of the blood vial, I do not believe that we were provided those in discovery. We have another set of defense photographs of the blood vial that we do have. Mr. Scheck tells me that he thinks that it's possible that the photographs that they used could be people's photographs. I did not have an opportunity over the noon hour to verify that. So at this time, I can't be 100% sure that he's wrong. But this is a possible discovery violation. I'm just not in a position at this point to say it was certain.
Well, given Mr. Matheson's testimony that he recognized it and testified to what it was, unless there's some other materiality to it, I'm not going to entertain any further comment on it then until you tell me it's relevant. All right. Let's have the jury.
Your Honor, there's a discovery issue, but I don't really know because I didn't really check. I'm just telling you that maybe there's a discovery issue. Maybe.
We've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Mr. Gregory Matheson is again on the witness stand, now undergoing a redirect examination. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Mr. Matheson. You're reminded you are still under oath, sir. Mr. Goldberg, you may commence your redirect examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Matheson. Oh, ladies and gentlemen. Sir, I want to start out by asking you more about this EAP issue, and I know we've discussed it at some length. You were asked about some literature during cross-examination. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And specifically, you were asked about 4 articles that you were shown on the witness stand that you read prior to your testimony in court.
That's correct.
Now, you said at one point that those were the only articles that you considered prior to testifying about this EAP issue for your testimony in this proceeding.
That's correct.
But you alluded to some book that you looked at.
Yes, I did.
Now, why on cross-examination didn't you tell the defense about what was in this book?
I wasn't asked about it. I was limited to the articles.
You mean by the questioning?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. I'd like to get into that in a little while, but first let's take a look at some of these articles that were referred to. Mr. Matheson, first on the Raxel and Eames article.
How do you spell that?
W-R-A-X-A-L-L, Eames, E-M-E-S.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is this one of the articles, sir, that you considered prior to your testimony?
It's one of the ones I read, yes.
And did this article actually contain a study that was done involving a number of samples to determine how it degrades, how the EAP marker degrades?
Yes, it did.
Now, on these stains that were studied in this particular article, were these stains in a wet condition or in a dry laboratory condition?
I believe they were dry.
Now, the stains at the scene in this case, item 42, if we were to assume hypothetically that when Mr. Fung saw that, he described it as being tacky when he arrived there at some time after 10:15, would that distinguish the blood that we're talking about in our case from the type of blood that was studied in the Raxel article?
Your Honor, objection. This takes the testimony if he's talking about the fingernails.
I'm sorry?
If he's talking about the fingernails.
Over.
If the blood was tacky or damp, then that would be a different set of conditions.
And when you looked at the bindles on one of the fingernail scrapings in this case, there was some evidence that it was tacky even when it was collected. Is that correct?
There was what appeared to be smearing on it that would indicate that it was still damp.
Now, why is this distinction between damp and dry stains in a laboratory condition? Well, let me ask it another way. Why is a distinction between damp stains at a crime scene as opposed to dry stains in a laboratory setting significant?
Well, it's different conditions.
But what's significant forensically about the different conditions in terms of degradation?
Well, a damp condition, like I mentioned before, hastens certain types of degradation. A dried sample, or even a damp sample for that case, that's subjected to heat is a different type of environmental situation and potentially could create a different type of result.
Now, with respect to the Raxel and Eames article, did you, in interpreting that article, take this as a cautionary type statement with respect to the EAP marker?
Over.
So I don't.
Did you take this as a statement to a forensic analyst to use caution with the EAP marker in terms of typing it?
This meaning the whole article?
Yes.
Yeah, the crux of that and many of the other articles is just an indication that the EAP has a problem with degradation, and you need to be careful about how it's interpreted.
And is that how you interpreted the article overall?
Yes,
Now, is it correct that with respect to these dried laboratory stains that they were talking about in Raxel and Eames, they did identify a particular degradation route?
yes, they did.
And I'd like to direct your attention back to our EAP board. So maybe we can understand this. While we're getting that, maybe you can describe for us verbally what this degradation route was that was discussed both during cross-examination and also in Raxel.
My understanding of it is similar to what was discussed before, that under those conditions and identifying the samples the way they are, the process of identifying the types, the degradation route showed the progressive loss of the faster bands or the anodal bands, so that you lose first a A2, B2, A1, and then eventually the B1.
You know, let's take this step by step. You use the term anodal. What does that mean?
That is an electrical term. It refers to the positive side as opposed to the negative side, which is cathodal.
Looking at our EAP phenotype
I have one of those big boards right in my bedroom. Yep.
board, the block diagram that we've used, can you tell us which is the anodal side of the diagram?
Looking at the diagram, the anodal side is where the plus is on the left, cathode is on the right where the negative is.
Why don't we take off the little magnetic strips? Okay, so with respect to the BA phenotype, can you describe for us the degradation route that was discussed by Raxel and Eames with respect to dried laboratory stains that were aged?
The degradation route, like previously described on cross,
Maybe you can use a pointer or something so that we can,
All right, we're referring to People's Exhibit 217.
I believe so. Let me double check.
217.
Yes.
the degradation route, as was previously described, but using this chart now to show it, would mean that you'd have a loss of the A band, which is indicated above, that's farthest to the left, then the B band, next one to the right of it, then the other A band, second band from the right, and then finally what has been marked as the C band.
And that is the degradation route that was described in this Raxel and Eames.
Yes, under the conditions that they had those samples.
Now, sir, in your experience as a serologist, and also based upon your reading of the literature, is that the only degradation route?
No, it is not.
Okay, and generally speaking, and maybe this is a slight oversimplification, you're saying this particular degradation route would be from the positive side to the negative side of the block diagram that we have,
The one I described earlier, yes.
but it is not the only one.
No.
Your Honor, I'm wondering if I might be able to use the defense exhibit on their block diagram showing the EAP degradation route.
Which item was
We
that?
don't have it in our system.
Mr. Harris, do you have that available? Do you know which number and letter you want? Have we printed those out yet, Mr. Harris? Okay. All right, while we're awaiting that, Mr. Goldberg, do you have any other matters you can
It
take
was
up?
1141A through Z.
I think about L is what you're looking for, correct?
It sounds like it might be that right.
Do you have anything else you can talk to,
Yes,
ask Mr. Matheson while we're waiting?
yes, I
Mr.
can
Glazer,
continue.
appreciate your cooperation with that.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Now, Mr. Matheson, you were also asked about a article by the name of, by the authors of Zajac, C-A-J-A-C, Grunbaum, G-R-U-N-B-A-U-M, and Crim, C-R-I-M. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Is this an article that came out after the one that we just discussed, the Raxel and Eames article?
I believe so, yes.
And is this the article that previously you testified said that inherent characteristics of the EAP system give rise to the possibility of very serious errors in phenotyping other than fresh blood, especially if the history of the sample is not fully known?
Yes, it is.
Now, in this particular article on page 615,
This is Zajac.
did they make reference to the Raxel and Eames article that you were asked about in cross-examination that we just discussed?
Yes, I believe it does.
And did they distinguish the Raxel and Eames article as dealing with a different situation from the situation that they were discussing in their article?
Yes.
Can you read for us what they said in order to distinguish Raxel and Eames from their article?
Yes, in referencing the Raxel and Eames article, they followed that up with stating apparently the bloodstains they used were prepared under laboratory conditions and the history and drying and preservation were well known.
And in Birnbaum, were they trying to give an idea of what would happen to wet samples that were not prepared under laboratory conditions?
It's leading.
Well, in the article, what did they say? What kind of stains were they dealing with here?
He just told you the answer. Just answer it.
Okay, the comment they made is that the preparation of their blood samples were done in such a way to simulate the adverse conditions which may take place in actual casework submitted to a crime lab.
Now, with respect to
I got your text, but I didn't look at it yet. I didn't look into what your text said yet. I'm working on it today, as soon as this
did
is
they,
over.
identify the same
Yes.
degradation route that you just described that was discussed in the Raxel and Eames?
I don't believe it was specifically delineated there.
Did they say that, how did they characterize, can you read for us how they characterized the problems of misidentification that occurred in this particular study with the samples that they created?
It states the problem with misidentification of the samples in this study was not due to weak or indistinct band patterns. Rather, discrete bands were present and readable, but they had been altered to indicate erroneous phenotypes.
Okay, and how did you interpret that, Mr. Simpson?
Well, again, that this system has degradation problems and that multiple bands can be read still and misinterpreted.
I mean, even if you have discrete band patterns, such as 2B bands.
I believe that indicates that.
Now, can I see 1141G, Mr. Harris? Is that possible? And then I want to see H and I. Okay, I want to go back to the Raxel and Eames article and the degradation route that they discussed. What does this represent when we're looking at the BA block diagram?
It represents a general location of the bands of a type BA.
All right, and the B block diagram.
It also represents the general location of the bands of a type B, though in neither case does it give any sort of indication of the intensity differences.
And then let's see, this is H. Can we see U? When you said that they don't give an indication of the intensity differences, you mean what?
Well, that's one of the ways of determining the types is, particularly between a B and a C, is how intense certain bands are. And these are just all being blocked as approximately the same size, as opposed to the people's chart on EAP, which does define the different intensities by the different sizes of the bands.
Okay, now, can you tell us what we're looking at here in terms of the degradation route?
This is consistent with the degradation route described in the Raxel article,
And that is what?
that you lose the bands from the anodal side or the plus side towards the cathodal side or the negative side, the slow side.
Can you orient this just verbally in relationship to the people's chart, the 6 EAP diagrams on the block diagram, just to show us how the two would interrelate?
If you, excuse me, if you were to turn the chart that's being projected up, be 90 degrees to the left, so that the arrow would indicate the origin or the cathodic side.
Okay. And can we see the next? It would be V on this, please. And now what does this show?
It's the final step in the degradation route that's described in the Raxel article, where what originally started out as a BA, the only thing that's left is the B1 band.
Okay, but you're saying that this degradation route that you were asked about is not the only one that you have seen or that is in the literature?
That's correct.
1141, this V. V is in Victor. The previous one was 1141U.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Now, the another one of the articles, the 3 articles that you were asked about, was the Yashan. Excuse me. Let me ask you about the Sensiba article first.
I was wondering about the
Did
Sensiba
the Sensiba article
article
contain a broad-based
all
study
night last night.
of the phenomena of EAP disintegration, or were they looking at only one stain when they discussed this degradation route, the one that we just saw in the defense?
It appears by reading that article that when they're referencing that degradation route that's been described in the Raxel article, that just 2 bloodstains were used, one of a type B and one of a type B.
And that's a bunch of bullshit. And I don't care if he's sane or not right now. He was competent at the time of the crime. He was competent at the time of the trial. He was competent at the time of the sentencing 40 years ago. I don't care what he is right now. And we should hear those phone calls because absolutely every single person in chat wanted to hear those phone calls, especially me.
Yay.
All right. And then finally, the Yashan article that was referenced. Did the Yashan article contain what purported to be a study of the phenomena of BA disintegration to B?
No, it did not.
What was that?
It was a technical note regarding the degradation of a B to a CB. I don't know if it then carried on to a C, but the A allele was not mentioned.
And so Yashan was not actually studying, did not purport to be studying the BA to B phenomena per se.
That's correct.
She was studying other issues in the EAP marker system with respect to degradation.
Oh, I don't know about studying. She was referencing other issues, yes.
Now, with respect to all 4 of the articles we've mentioned so far, the Raxel and Eames, the Grunbaum and Zajac, the Sensiba, and the Yashan article, considered together, did you take those articles as some sort of a cautionary statement to the forensic analyst with respect to the EAP system?
Yes, I did.
How so?
And that is, I mean, every one of them indicates that the EAP enzyme, unlike the other ones, does in fact degrade, and that a degradation can lead to mistyping. So you have to be careful about how you interpret EAP results.
Now, when you were asked about the Raxel and Eames, well, let me ask you another question first. This book that you alluded to during your direct examination, what was the book?
It's the Forensic Science Handbook by Richard Safferstein.
And was there a particular portion of that book that you referenced in particular informing the opinions that you expressed on the witness stand with respect to the BA to B phenomena?
It enforced my knowledge of that, yes.
Can you tell us which portion you looked at?
I've co-authored that and they kept my name off of it. Isn't that a bunch of bull? Yep, my name should be right here somewhere. Yep, because I co-authored that book when I was a very little girl.
It was a section that was written by Dr. Sensiba.
Maybe you can give us.
I
the
was like
page number,
4,
because I
I'm
believe
sure of
the
it,
council may
when
have a
I
copy of it.
co-authored that book.
Well, it's chapter 8 that starts on page 338. The area that we are referencing, I believe the paragraph starts on 369 and concludes on 370.
You got it, Mr. Blazer?
If I may look.
Take your time. Please take your time when you look at this page. It was hard writing it for me. So that's it. That's all you're going to look at it. Rude.
Mr. Goldberg.
And did Mr. Sensabaum in this chapter that he authored mention the Raxel and Eames, what we've discussed as being the Raxel and Eames degradation route?
He wasn't going to, but I
Yes, he was.
reminded him.
Did he say that that was the only degradation route?
I don't believe so, no.
Can you tell us what he said?
Well, it makes reference to the stabilities of the isozymes. They're the different types. One quote here is that the A isozymes are the least stable and the C isozymes the most stable. Thus, one might expect the A bands in BA and CA types to be lost before the B or C bands are lost, and this, in fact, has been observed.
Does he say anything?
I'm objecting with the rest of that paragraph is read. Mr. Goldberg.
I don't know what the legal basis of the objection is.
256.
What?
256, I believe.
You can't make Mr. Goldberg ask a question that you can't make him. You can tell him to finish that paragraph when you are in cross, but you can't make the prosecutor ask a specific question or elicit information. That's your job on cross, sir.
Sir, can you read the rest of the paragraph?
Be happy
Oh
to.
my
Sure. In
gosh.
typing aged type BA bloodstains, for example, only the major B band, the anodal B band, may be apparent, and the temptation would be to type the sample as a B. To avoid error of this sort, empirical rules for typing interpretation need to be invoked. Since it has been observed that in aged BA bloodstains, the slow B band is generally lost before the fast A band, the controlling rule is to withhold judgment on a putative B type until both B bands are apparent. If the sample is in fact a BA type, the major A band should be apparent by that time.
Now, did Mr. Sensabaum identify any particular degradation route that is different from the Raxel and Eames degradation route?
I feel that this article, or this paragraph actually mentions a couple of different routes or discrepancies between the possible ways the degradation can occur.
Objection, move to strike as non-responsive.
How so? What other degradation route is identified there, sir?
Well, in one sentence, he states that in typing age type BA bloodstains, for example, only the major B band or the anodal B band, this is the anodal or the one closest to the anode side, as opposed to this band, which is a cathodal or closest to the origin, may be apparent. He's saying that at some point it's possible that only the major band or the brightest band might be present.
How is that different from the Raxel and Eames?
In their study, they saw the degradation route so that the cathodal band was the last one that was apparent.
Maybe we can let's just cover up the A bands for a moment so that we can make sure I'm understanding. In the BA, on the BA chart for the record, I just put the covers back over the A bands on the BA phenotype. Okay,
Yes.
so according to the Raxel and Eames study, they're saying that which band would remain after the sample had degraded?
The most cathodal one, or the one closest to the origin.
Okay, the one that's on the right side of this diagram.
That's correct.
And in this portion that you just read to us in Sensabaum, he's saying which?
In that one portion there, he makes reference to what he calls the major B band, or the cathodal B band, the anodal B band may be apparent.
And does he say that these degradation routes, that it always occurs in either of these two ways?
I didn't read that in there, no.
Does he say that that these are general ways that they happen, that this is how it generally happens?
There is the term generally used. Yes.
So in interpreting that, did you, as a forensic analyst, take that to mean that this is the only path, degradation path, that this marker will take, or that this is one of the degradation paths that this marker will take?
Objection.
This is Chamber. Phrase the question.
How did you take that term that this generally can take these two paths?
On reading that paragraph and the discrepancies between the different types, it indicates to me that there may be more than one way that degradation can occur.
And did you take the totality of the article articles and the book that you just referenced, and also the source book that I think you referenced earlier in your cross-examination, as providing some sort of cautionary statement to the forensic analyst when trying to type a B and distinguishing it from a BA?
Yes.
And what was that?
Again, in general, that this is an enzyme that has degradation problems, and you just have to be careful about the interpretation of the results.
Did anything that you read in these articles, Mr. Matheson, cause you to change the statement that you made initially on your analyzed evidence report that you could not exclude the possibility that with respect to the fingernail scrapings, it was a BA that degraded into a B?
No, it did not.
Did anything that was brought up during cross-examination by the defense cause you to change the opinion that you've offered on direct, that probably the samples underneath the fingernails were a BA that degraded to appear to be a B?
I'm not sure about that.
Objection to state testimony.
Sustained.
What was your opinion, your bottom line opinion, when you considered all of the facts of this case as you are aware of them, including the photographs of where the victim's body was, the pool of blood, item number 42, and the other tests that you did? What was your opinion as to the fingernail scrapings?
Well, the result does not change. I did see a B, but in considering absolutely everything, I would have to say that it is a likelihood that the blood that was found under the fingernails were in fact from Ms. Brown and had degraded. But again, I cannot totally eliminate the possibility that it's a B.
Now, did anything that was brought up during cross-examination cause you to change that?
No, it did not.
Now, sir, with respect to resolving this issue, is it possible to look at a control study from the scene?
I don't know if it totally resolves it, but it does lend credence to the possibility that you have degradation occurring.
And what does that mean, using the control study?
If you are typing, or if you test another blood sample that's of a known source or that you believe to be of a known source from the scene, and it shows a similar type of degradation that you have seen in the past and experienced, and that possibility exists in your sample, then I believe it's important to take that into consideration.
Now, is this idea of looking at a control study, such as a pool of blood underneath the victim, something that was reflected in science, in the forensic science literature, that you considered prior to your testimony here?
Well, I had that opinion prior to this. However, I have read an article that enforces my opinion about that.
I had it right in my hand. Okay. Specifically, sir, did you look at an article by Bruce Berdoli and Robert Allen entitled Electrophoresis Reliability, the Contaminant Issue?
Yes, I did.
And direct your attention to page 1546.
Mr. Blazer, do you have that article?
I recited this in one of our papers, Your Honor. Sir, is this dealing with the EAP issue per se, or is this dealing more broadly with various contaminant issues in electrophoresis and problem resolving in electrophoresis?
It's dealing with electrophoresis reliability in general, not just with the AP.
Can you tell us, can you read for us the portion of the Berdoli article that suggests looking at a control study from the scene and trying to provide more information about what's happening at the scene? Portion that I have bracketed off there.
Starts with, furthermore, the competent and experienced forensic scientist does not work in a vacuum. It should be stressed that the analyst gathers as much information as possible regarding the case, then in parentheses, and potential influence such as contaminants, close parentheses, to evaluate properly the data obtained from evidentiary material. More importantly, in reality, an ideal control study is naturally provided to forensic scientists. This is the electrophoretic analysis of victims' blood on victims' clothing and other substrata. The blood shed by a victim onto his or her own clothing and surrounding substrata is exposed to the same myriad of environmental insults as other question stains submitted to the laboratory for electrophoretic analysis.
Hold on.
The accuracy
hold
of
on,
electrophoretic
hold on.
typing of the question
Let's look.
sample can be independently verified with the victim's whole blood.
And sir, what was your interpretation of that in terms of using a control study to resolve issues as to what's happening in a crime scene?
Well, that confirmed a policy that we have had as
I
far as
think-
collecting a known blood sample.
I think maximum, the very worst case scenario we have right here is 3 more hours, but we're on 1.25 speed. So 1.25 speed. It's not even going to be 3 hours. We know he's on for today. We see he's on for tomorrow. And we have less than an hour left today. So we have 2 hours tomorrow, but not really because we're going fast. So this is probably 2 hours left of him that I can see on the screen right now. 2 hours. We're going to get through a very big chunk of that today. Very big. The biggest you've ever seen. No one's ever seen, big like this before. So here, we don't know. It's still May 5th. It's an hour and 10 minutes long. So this might be him. You can, if you read those books that I co-authored right there. We're almost done with him. We just got a little bit more, but it looks like we're jumping out of the frying pan into the fryer because she looks like a science type, doesn't she? And I see him here. I don't know. We'll find out. We're gonna find out.
From the scene from each of the victims,
Kelly.
and that information from that can be used to consider information derived from other samples.
And sir, is that why, in expressing certain opinions in court on direct examination regarding this EAP issue, you considered test results on the pool of blood underneath Nicole Brown, item 42?
Yes, that's correct.
Maybe we can see the serology results for it. Now, Mr. Matheson, when you considered those test results on 42, were those test results inconclusive?
Yes, they were.
And were you reporting those test results? Let me wait until we put the board up. Maybe it will make it a little easier. That equals 202. Okay, directing your attention to the item that says 42, blood under Nicole Brown. Under the EAP column, it says inconclusive B, very weak. Is that correct?
Yes, it does.
And were you reporting this inconclusive result for the purposes of suggesting that it was correct? In other words, that the blood was in fact a type B blood?
Well, I did not report a type at all for that. My report reflects inconclusive.
I'm sorry, my terminology was wrong. When you were testifying about this result, were you testifying about it for the purposes of suggesting that the inconclusive B was a correct result in the sense that the blood really was a type B?
No, I was not.
So what was your purpose in considering this and testifying about this and giving your explanations about the EAP results under the fingernails?
Okay, the inconclusive, like I mentioned, no activity would be you're not seeing anything on the gel. A result that's reported is a definitive result. It's what you are seeing occurring on that gel. A inconclusive falls somewhere in between. It's a pretty broad range. It could be just almost possible to call, but you're not quite sure there's something about it, or it could be something that's very vague, just kind of a blurry occurrence in there. In this case, I observed what I thought might be a B. It wasn't good enough to call. I am not going to say for a fact that it is a B, but it occurred in an area and on a sample that we are assuming to be from a particular person and thus of a particular type. We know her for a fact to be a type BA, and the fact that this is an inconclusive B shows that there's something going on with this blood and with the samples, and that the results should be interpreted carefully.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to mark 2 more exhibits, and they're similar to, in fact, just smaller versions of the ones that the defense marked.
Someone called me a bee today. It was lovely. It was wonderful. It made my heart go boo, boo, boo. No one's on Twitch.
224,
I can see
And
here if
R is
anybody, it says
224A.
one person watching, but
Yes.
so maybe
And
one
A
person
is
is
what
over there.
appears to be an
Maybe it's you, Josh.
electrocardiogram, and it has the numbers 1304.
And Mr. Blazer, you're familiar with both of these?
And
A lot of rum
224B
needed to listen to it.
is
Rum.
7310.
All right.
Now,
Just show those to Mr. Blazer real quick.
when you were talking about item number 42, just a few moments ago, what is the purpose of collecting that item again?
I think we've asked this a couple times.
So, sir, when you were saying that you were assuming that that is the victim's blood, that's based on what?
The location from where it was collected.
And is that why this type of sample is collected?
Yes.
Sir, I'd now like to show you people's 224A and 224B. Showing you 224A first. What is that?
224A is a copy of a photograph of my electrophoresis run number 7309, which contains, among other items, the fingernail scrapings 84A and 84B.
And 224B is
224B is another photograph of electrophoresis run number 7310, which includes, among other things, the results of item number 42.
no. On 224B for identification, I'd like to perhaps if I could put it on the Elmo and then maybe pass it around. I'd like to. Could you identify for us, just by writing on the bottom of the photograph, where 42 is?
It's in position 4, and I'm putting a arrow up from the bottom above the number 42.
Not going to 224B on the Elmo. We see the part of the photograph that has the writing on it. No, we need to see the white part, the bottom. Okay, so have you written in where 42 is?
Yes, I have.
And is one of the reasons that you considered this that logically a pool of the victim's blood should contain the victim's blood?
Yes.
So without testing it, would have you expected this to look like a BA?
Yes, I would have.
But when you tested it, what did it look like?
It gave a weak result that eventually ended up being called inconclusive, but I saw the two B bands very, very lightly, kind of fuzzy clouds in the areas where you'd expect to see them.
Maybe we can just, with directing the arrows, print out where those are.
Oh, okay, we need to go up. I move the arrow to the left, now to the right. You can go lay right on top of that other band. And that's pointing right into the lower B band. That's fine right there.
Okay, and let's put another arrow on the upper, pointing to the upper B band.
If you go directly above the arrow that was previously placed by two bands, go up, 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 down a little bit. Right about in there is the other B band.
I know it's hard to see on the Elmo, Mr. Matheson, but when you look at this plate, do you see any distinct band pattern in either of the two A regions?
For that item?
Yes.
No, I do not.
But do you see a band pattern in the 2B regions?
I see something that has kind of a band-like appearance. It's not a good band. If it was, I'd have called it.
All right. Now, assuming this is in fact a BA, using the Raxel and Eames degradation route, if we assume that were the only degradation route, would you expect to see this?
No, I would not.
Why not?
Because if this is a fact, a BA, as you're assuming, then I would expect to still see that lower A band in addition to the 2B bands.
I'm going to object. This mischaracterizes this exhibit. I see a band there.
Well,
Now, Mr. Matheson, but by the way, how many years do you have of experience in total?
How was your
looking at these
birthday
band patterns?
yesterday? Did you have a good birthday, John?
Approximately 12 years.
And you're saying that there are only two distinct, I'm sorry, they didn't say they were distinct, but there are only two band-like patterns that you see on this.
Objection. Mischaracterizes testimony. Said it was not a band.
sustain, rephrase the question.
There were only two patterns that you saw, is that correct?
In that lane, I am seeing what appears to be two very weak band-like appearances in those areas. This is a very weak sample, difficult to read.
Now, can we print this out? As People's 224.
C.
Now, with the court's permission, can we show this to the jury because the resolution on our calmo isn't that great?
Yes.
And just before I show them to you, Mr. Matheson, so that so that we know what we're looking for, you wrote a 42 on the lane that represents 42. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Pointing up, and the well, maybe we can also pass around the printout too, so that they can just compare.
Yeah, I see that. Please.
Sure.
Pass around. I have no objection to the photograph.
Well, I just think that might be helpful in identifying where to look.
I disagree. I disagree.
All right, objections overruled.
Still waiting.
That's correct. One more to go. Okay.
I might be able to ask a couple questions.
Please do.
Just to, yeah, thank you. Um,
I'd like to finish with Mr. Matheson today if we could.
Your Honor, I'd like to mark as people's next in order. 225. And I may also be marking the 224D later on, but as 225, a document that says electrophoresis worksheet
And Mr. Blaze, you have a copy of this?
contains 41, 42. It's L387. Mr. Matheson, while we're waiting for the printout, can you just tell us what L387 is?
L387 is a photocopy that actually is slightly crooked, cuts off part of the left-hand column of one of my electrophoresis worksheets that corresponds with photo number 7310.
And on this particular worksheet, you called item number 84, the fingernails, as a B what?
This worksheet does not have 84 on it.
That doesn't have 84. Does that have 42 on it?
Yes, it
I'm
does.
sorry. And what was 42 called as?
A B question mark INC for inconclusive. The second reading on that was an NA for no activity.
I just want to perhaps put this on the Elmo just one more time, if I may, before I go to the jury. This is 224 game. I'm not going to mark it or make another printout.
We have to see it again?
I just want to make sure that everyone knows where to look.
I think the arrow there is apparent in the lane.
Now, sir, between in the arrow is pointing to an area that, I guess on the photograph would be about a quarter to a half of an inch above it, that's sort of a bright band. And where is the band that we're looking for in relationship to that?
Well, it's in that same,
Characterize the testimony.
Sustained
What?
band.
Well, I'm referring to you see these very, very bright hash marks that go all the way across the bottom part of the photograph.
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I do.
Okay. And there's one of those hash marks. There's an arrow that has number 42 and the arrow is pointing to one of the hash marks.
Yes.
Okay, where in relationship to that hash mark is the lane that constitutes 42?
42 is everything directly above the arrow.
So Twitch is a little weird. Let me show you what I see on mine, and you'll see what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is Twitch isn't a separate video like YouTube. I do a stream, I do a stream, I do a stream. Like this is all I did. Like when I try to start a new stream on Twitch, it simply changes the name of my stream. But look, this up here is all from my last stream. So it's a continuation of my earlier stream. So I don't know if you just go into the earlier stream, if you'll get your chat back. I don't know. But it's not like you were in the other stream and now you're going into this stream. That's not how Twitch works. You're either on my stream or not on my stream. It's I don't know how else to describe it.
It's a lane about 3/8 of an inch wide, directly above the arrow.
Sure, hash marks probably wasn't the scientifically correct term, but
Cringe, 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 cringe. I don't want to see this.
Collect that from Deputy Long, please. All right, proceed.
now, Mr. Matheson, I want to show you 224A for identification. And does that have item number 42, excuse me, item number 84 in it?
Yes, yes, it does.
And using the same pen, can you write arrows for 84A and 84B?
Okay, I'm writing an arrow, 2 arrows down from the 2 columns that indicate 84A and 84B, and then marking 84A under one of the arrows and just B under the other one because of lack of space.
Sir, on that, are there any other results that you got that appear to contain a B-like pattern?
There are actually a couple others that I called B inconclusive, and I believe there is one. No, that's it.
Is there a 117 on there?
One of the lanes is the results of item 117.
Can you
yes.
just point that out for us with the arrow, in other words, and write 117?
Okay, I'm writing, again, an arrow pointing up into the lane that expresses the results or the data obtained from item number 117.
And was 117 identified as being one of the rear gate stains from the Bundy location?
Yes, I believe it was.
And you got a B-like pattern on that?
I called it a B question mark inconclusive, yes.
Now, Mr. Matheson, why do the lanes that contain 84A and B look so messy to a layperson?
Well, there are times in electrophoresis where when you're doing a run, there is something that blocks or hinders the electrical flow through it, through the gel from one side to another, and causes the bands not to migrate as evenly as they should.
Now, with respect to 84A and B, are there any hazy areas on this that do not, in your opinion, constitute a distinct band pattern?
Well, there's general haziness in a lot of the areas.
And maybe using the marker, you can identify some of the haziness for us that, in your opinion, does not constitute a distinct band pattern. In other words, an A-like band.
Well, in general, there is a haziness that shows up. We're talking about 84A and B
Yeah.
right now. That does show up or appear to exist between the two B bands. It's a general fluorescence or luminescence occurring there.
Of which one? Of 84A or 84B?
As I see it here, of both of them, there just appears to be a general lightening of that area.
Can you direct the arrow down to the location that you're referring to?
Okay, if you move the arrow to the left, farther, and down, right in there. In general, that's true on both items.
And you mean on the 84B one as well?
That's correct.
Can you direct the arrow to the area on the 84B side? Can you get the arrow to face?
There we
Thank you.
go.
Objection, you're relevant to some foundation that this has any scientific meaning.
Oh, well. Move the arrow to the right and down a little bit. And in that general area there, you can just see there's a slight brightening of that area, not a band, but something's occurring in that area.
But in your view, does that have any forensic significance?
Well, it's not anything that I'd call even close to a band, so no.
Okay, and is that why it is helpful to have some experience in looking at these kinds of things as opposed to just being a layperson to try to distinguish between something that's there but doesn't have any significance and something that's there and does?
Objection, leading.
Sustain.
Sir, does your experience as a serologist help you to distinguish between something that appears that does not have significance when looking at EAP as opposed to something that does?
Yes, it does.
And how so?
It's just after having seen many of these samples, you get the experience on how to read them.
And in your opinion, these highlighted areas, not highlighted, but the areas with the arrows pointing to them, you would not conclude are A bands. Is that correct?
I don't see what I feel are bands in that area.
All right. Now, directing your attention to 117, how many bands on 84A do you see?
We're talking about 84A now, right?
84A.
I see what appears to be two bands.
Can we use a different color arrow to demarcate those two bands?
Okay, move it down, please. That's one of the bands there.
Thank you for the bits,
Curve,
Kelly.
that's the
Thank you,
band.
thank
Down
you.
further. Down. Right about there is roughly the middle left side of that band as it curves down.
And can you now mark for us using also green arrows, but facing the other way, the bands that you see on 84B?
Move it down, over to the left a little bit. There, a little bit further. Right there. That's the one of the bands. And down further, down. Go to the left, and right down inside of that mush is another. I'll move it up just a little bit. There. That's the location of the other band.
And now let's turn our attention to 117. If we can just keep this all and then print it out later to get it all in one shot. Just for the record, Mr. Matheson, there are two yellow arrows. Do those yellow arrows signify what you are saying are the B bands in the 84A lane?
Yes,
And the red arrow signifies some haze that you consider to be insignificant.
that I don't consider to be a band. That's correct.
With respect to the 84B lane, the green arrows signify the B bands in that lane,
Yes,
and the blue arrow signifies what?
the hazy area in between it.
That you do not attribute forensic significance to.
That I'm not seeing a band. That's correct.
Now, turning our attention to 117.
This is part of the control study.
Turning your attention to 117, does that also had a B-like pattern according to your testimony? Is that correct?
I called it a B inconclusive.
Right.
Both bands are present.
Objection, outside the scope of correct.
Josh, thank you for 100 bits. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Abstain.
Mr. Matheson, in your experience in other cases, have you seen instances where a known BA sample had degraded in such a way as to appear to be a B with both B bands present?
I believe I have, yes.
And have you seen situations like that occurring, in your opinion, at this particular crime scene?
Yes, I believe I have.
Only in the pool of blood 42? Or elsewhere at the crime scene?
Taking into account other information elsewhere.
And is 117 one of the other locations where you believe that you've seen a B-like pattern?
Objection beyond scope.
Sustained.
Well, sir, in your opinion, is your opinion as to the fingernail scrapings that you've offered both on direct and cross, take into account anything else at the crime scene other than the items that you testified to specifically on direct and cross-examination?
Objection beyond scope.
Well, you can answer that question.
There is one other sample that I did take into consideration, not necessarily to make the call of the B, but to reinforce my feeling that it may have at one time been a BA and that this phenomenon does in fact exist.
And which one was that?
Item number 117.
Okay, now with respect to,
Objection beyond scope. Move to strike.
Sustained.
All
We're not
test-
going to go into 117.
yeah, thank you, Your Honor.
Let's move.
Can we print out a copy of this document?
Objection beyond the scope. I object to anything with 117 on it.
Overruled. Jury's instructed on this exhibit to just disregard the 117 lane, but rather than go back and remark the whole thing, let's print it out. All right, let's proceed.
Thank you.
Okay, we can slice that part off.
Thank you for the bit, Kelly. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Maybe I can proceed with a few more questions and wrap up the EAP issue, and then I'd like to show these the photograph and the printout to the jury. The photo I'd like to mark as 224. I mean, the printout is 224D.
Yeah, I would request the printout be cut off on the end rather than scribbled on.
We'll do that.
And with respect to item 85, I'm not going to, we won't show the electrophoresis plate on that. I'm not sure that it's worth the time, but on 85A and B, on our board, you said that the EAP type was inconclusive BA.
That's how it's on the board, yes.
And with respect to the B band, excuse me, A bands on that sample, what did you see?
That they were weaker than I would expect for a expected BA result.
And was what you were seeing consistent with the Raxel and Eames article in terms of the degradation path for the laboratory stains in that article?
Objection beyond the scope, correct.
Overruled.
What I was seeing, assuming that was degradation, did not appear to be consistent with that route,
Why?
because the two B bands were quite bright and the two A bands were fairly weak.
Now, Mr. Matheson, with respect to this issue of EAP, what steps did you take in order to try to resolve it further after this testing was performed?
I recommended that those items be submitted for DNA testing.
Okay. And it was suggested that when these came back from the Department of Justice, it was for the purposes of EAP testing. Is that true?
That's something that was mentioned on cross, yes.
But I mean, is it true that that's the purpose for which they were returned to your laboratory?
No, like I testified, they were just returning to become a part of the rest of the case. It's our evidence.
Was everything from DOJ that was sent to them eventually returned to your laboratory?
Most everything. At this point, I'm not sure if we have absolutely everything back in our laboratory.
And why not do another EAP test?
At this point, I didn't feel it was necessary.
Well, why would you decide to submit it for DNA testing but not perform another EAP test?
Well, initially, I didn't want to use up any more sample to run additional tests.
And would an additional EAP test provide you with more information?
I would expect it to give me the same result as it did the first time.
Would a genetic test, well, why would you expect it to give you the same results as it did the first time?
because the result is what I obtained from the sample. If I run it once or 100 times, I would expect to see the same thing from that sample.
So it doesn't get undegraded just because you run it another time?
Assuming it was degraded, yes, it would not just go undegraded.
Is there a way, by the way, according to the scientific literature, to undegrade a sample, to bring out a degraded band?
Depends on what we're calling degraded. There are some situations where you get a type of degradation, you add what's called a reducing agent to it, and it can correct some of the problems.
Was there anything that could be done in this? I don't know if this is a correct term, to undegrade bands, if there are A bands in our samples here, 84A and B.
Not to my knowledge, no.
And you've testified that, generally speaking, when you're doing these tests, you try to conserve sample for future testing. Is that correct?
All types of tests, yes.
And is that so that it will be available for anyone, either the defense or prosecution, that wants to do more testing on an item?
Yes, you try and not use any more sample than necessary.
Did you want to conserve any remaining sample from 85A and 85B rather than using it on another EAP
Isn't
test?
this sort of like the same question turned about the fifth way around?
I don't know.
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
The jury loved the undegraded question.
I'd like to.
We need to edit that, the 117 article.
Does the court have any scissors?
Do you want to hand those two items to juror number one, please? We'll take a break at 2:30. See counsel without court reporter.
Not conclusive. It does not say that this blood sample could have come from this person and nobody else. It is merely, it includes them in a certain percentage of the population that could have left a stain. And an exclusion is an absolute statement. If I am making an exclusion, I am saying this blood could not have come from that person. If the exclusion is based on a EAPB, then I have concerns with it because I'm aware that it can degrade from a BA, that there is another possibility.
Narrative response.
Sustain. State a question.
Sir, why is it that you would distinguish between an exclusion and an inclusion for the purposes of this EAPB type marker?
Well, because in the case of conventional serology, it's not a definitive answer. An inclusion does not specifically say this blood came from this person and nobody else, as opposed to an exclusion where it is an absolute statement. If I'm saying this blood could not have come from somebody, that's my statement. It's a absolute.
Okay. And sir, during the course of your years at the serology unit in the scientific investigation division, have you ever had any hesitation of making exclusions when that's what you see on your electrophoretogram?
Objection, irrelevant.
I'm not totally sure I understand. Do you mean, have I hesitated making exclusion if I see a B?
No, in other words, just in general, when something is an exclusion, do you report it as an exclusion?
Yes, I do.
Now, we were talking about the blood vial chart that the defense used yesterday, and some of the transactions involving item number 17. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
Now, I was asking you about various pipetters that are used. Did you bring to court the type of pipetter that we were talking about that I referred to as a pipette man or a mechanical type pipetter?
Yes, I brought one of those.
Can you show us what that looks like?
Mr. Fairtlow, can I get you to move this easel back about a foot? You're obstructing the view of some of the yours here.
Okay, this, what I'm holding in my hand, it happens to be a Pipette Man brand, what we call a pipetter, a reusable pipetter. It allows you to set the amount that you want to deliver, and you draw it up into a disposable tip.
All right, Mr. Blaze, you're going to have to angle yourself differently here.
The unit is reusable because that's where you set the amount and stuff, but it has a tip on the end of it that is what you're actually drawing the fluid into. They come in different sizes, from very, very fine to this one happens to hold a maximum of 1 milliliter. And you depress the plunger, draw up your fluid, and then press it again to deliver it. When you're done with that sample, there's another plunger on the back that releases the tip from the unit, and that's discarded.
So you discard these tips instead of autoclaving them or somehow sanitizing them to reuse them?
They're not reused.
Why not? Why don't you reuse them in serology?
Because at that point, they have another sample in it. It would be inappropriate to use a previously used item like that.
And with the tip, when you discard it, how do you discard it?
Well, the mechanics of it, like I said, is there's a plunger on it. We have biological waste things on the different lab benches, and you don't touch it or anything. It's as simple as just sticking this towards the biological waste and then releasing it, and it's disposed of.
And do you calculate when you do this procedure the amount of blood that's left in and on the outside of the pipetter?
No, I do not.
Your Honor, could we possibly take a picture of the pipetter and introduce that as an exhibit? Because I don't want to introduce the pipetter itself.
I would object and ask that the pipetter be introduced.
It's a $300 item, so we prefer to.
Well, count his case, his exhibit.
Can we bring it over here?
$300 for that thing?
Actually, I think that particular model is about that or a little more. There are some cheaper, but they are quite expensive.
Mr. Matheson, in the pipette tube, there's a what appears to be a little white stopper. Maybe that's probably not the correct terminology. You know what I'm referring to in the end of the plastic portion of the pipette tip.
Yes, it's up towards the larger opening where it attaches to the pipetter.
What's that for?
That is specifically in there, particularly when you're dealing with biological materials, because if you, as you're drawing the fluid up inside the tip, if you do it too quickly, the possibility exists of, because you're actually forming a suction and pulling it, of spraying small particles that can make their way up into the part of the pipetter itself that you reuse. So that plug in there allows the air to pass through, but does not allow any of the biological product to pass.
Now, Mr. Matheson, I'd like to show you next what we previously marked as Rule 63F for identification. And can you hold that up so that jurors can see it and tell us what that is?
What this is an example of two glass disposable pipettes that we use. One of them has somewhere along the line gotten its tip broken off, but these are, I made reference to a type of disposable one. They're not calibrated. You don't know how much you're drawing up or how much you're delivering, but you place a small rubber bulb on the top, depress the bulb, place it into the fluid, let the bulb up, and it sucks up the fluid into it.
Okay, so we don't actually have the bulb attachment on these particular items.
No.
And the bulb attachment, I take it, just creates some suction type effect in the disposable pipetter to draw the blood into the pipetter.
That's correct.
Now, did you use any of these types of disposable pipetters, the glass ones, in the work that you did in conjunction with item 17?
Yes, I did.
And how much
Pancakes acquired. Now I'm going to take her to work and I'll be right back, guys.
blood, if you're drawing a milliliter, say, is going to be filled into the pipetter?
Very roughly, probably between a third and 2/3. I believe a milliliter would fall somewhere around in there, but I'm not totally sure of that.
So you're estimating.
Correct, no foundation.
Sustain, rephrase the question.
Well, can you give us your best estimate as to where a milliliter would be in this file, and just tell us the parameters of your margin of error?
Objection, no foundation.
Sustain.
Sir, have you ever drawn a milliliter into one of these pipetters before?
I'm sure I have approximately at some point.
And when you do this routinely, do you pay very, very close attention to exactly where it is?
No, this, like I mentioned, this is not a calibrated instrument. It's just for removing some fluid and delivering it somewhere else.
And when you say it's not calibrated, what do you mean by that?
Well, there's no marks on it to indicate different volume levels. It's merely a device to transfer some fluid from point A to point B.
Now, when you use this on the reference file 17, can you give us an estimate to the best of your abilities as to how much of the disposable pipetter was actually occupied by blood from item 17?
Objection, no foundation.
What time are we talking about? Which incident?
Well, you did it on the 27th, I think. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell us?
I have no independent recollection of that particular moment, and I don't pay attention to exactly how much is drawn each time.
Okay, so we have no way of then being able to reconstruct with any high degree of accuracy exactly what that amount is.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct? Now, Mr. Matheson, when you perform this function, what do you do with the amount of blood that's left on the inside and outside of the disposable pipetter?
It's discarded.
And why don't you make some effort to try to recover that and return it to the blood vial?
But there's no reason to it. You have a blood vial that has quite a bit of blood in it in comparison to what we eventually end up using for our testing. There's plenty left for additional one. You use that, draw some up, you squirt it out. I mean, you don't throw it away full or something. You use your bulb, squirt out as much as you can, and discard the rest.
Now, I'd like to put the pipette man up on the Yoma so that we can print this photograph. Apparently, we need to do that mechanically. Do you have to lower the photograph? While that's printing it, can I continue to ask questions? Thank you. Now, Mr. Matheson, within the Scientific Investigations Division, are there any type of other pipetters other than the two that we've discussed today, which are used in taking blood from reference vials?
Yes, there is.
What is this other type?
It's just another type of disposable pipette. It's made out of plastic rather than glass.
Your Honor, when we have the picture printed, can I mark that as people's next in order? I guess it's 226.
227.
And Mr. Matheson, would there be any problem with us introducing the actual tip of the pipette man as an exhibit? Can we
No.
have that? Maybe we can have the tip of the pipette man as 228.
All right, People's 228, the disposable pipetter.
Sir, did you bring an example of this other pipetter to court with you this morning?
Yes, I did.
Can you show us that?
This is a example of one of the other type of pipetters that are used by in our laboratory. It's all in one unit as opposed to the glass one, which had a separate bulb on the top. This one has one built into it, and it works the same way as the glass one. You squeeze the top, stick it into the fluid, let it out, release the top, draws it up inside of it, and then you squeeze it again to deliver it where you want.
Which division uses toxicology?
They do mainly, but is occasionally used in serology.
And in using this item to draw blood, what is the procedure in the laboratory with respect to what you do with the blood that stays on the inside or clings to the outside during the transaction?
Well, similar to the glass disposable pipette and the disposable tips on the pipetter, once you have squeezed it and delivered as much as you can out of it, this is discarded in a biohazard waste disposal.
And why isn't any further effort tried to made to retrieve whatever is clinging to the inside and outside of the pipetter in order to return it to its vial?
again, it is not seen as being necessary to return every little microliter of blood that's present pulled out of a liquid blood tube.
So it's just thrown away and lost forever.
That's correct.
And do you have any personal knowledge with respect to the testing that was done in toxicology, I believe, on June the 20th, with respect to exactly how much blood was pipetted into one of these pipetters?
No, I do not.
And do you know how much blood remained on the inside and outside of the pipetter after that transaction was complete?
No, I do not.
So, Mr. Matheson, we have no way of being able to reconstruct with precision exactly how much blood was actually tossed out during that transaction. Is that true?
That's correct.
So all of these numbers that were placed on the defense chart, were they exact numbers or approximations?
They would all be approximations.
And did any of those numbers take into account the amounts that are lost during the transactions dealing with the blood? In other words, on pipetters, on gloves, on Kim wipes, and the like.
No, I don't believe they did.
So the defense chart is therefore incomplete and inaccurate. Is that correct?
Counsel, that's an argumentative question. And which board are you referring to? Which exhibit?
I'm referring to the exhibit that's been marked. I can see it. As 11. 39. Defense board accurate.
No, I don't believe so.
Now, also, well, I'll get into that later. Let's start up again with the the September the 30th transaction, where you testified that you delivered 1 milliliter of blood to Mr. Regal.
Okay.
When you said delivered 1 milliliter of blood, what did you mean by that?
That rather than just estimating, I used a pipetter, either like the one I described. Like I said, we have a couple other different brands that they work basically the same. They just look differently. Use that same type of tip, set the pipetter to 1 milliliter, and transferred that amount from the blood vial into a microcentrifuge tube that we've talked about before, a small conical plastic tube.
And Mr. Matheson, could you place a 1 milliliter sticker on the defense blood vial?
Directly above the 2.6?
Yes. Now, Mr. Matheson, is the 1 milliliter that's represented there an exact measure or an approximate?
It's an approximation.
Why?
As mentioned before, even though the pipetter is set, and I believe that I delivered, approximately 1 milliliter into this microcentrifuge tube, there is going to be a small amount that's going to be lost when you remove the cap, and that's going to be clinging to the sides of the tip that's going to be discarded.
I think we've heard this now about 6 times.
But we're going to go all the way up the chart, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Matheson, in order for this to be accurate, therefore, shouldn't the chart reflect that it is an approximation as opposed to an exact, precise figure?
It's argumentative as well. Sustained.
Is there a symbol that you use in science when you're talking about measurements for the purposes of showing that something is an approximation?
Yes, there is.
And can you write that symbol on the 1 milliliter portion just to signify that?
Before we do that, 1492 indicates you can't see. And Mr. Blazer, do you have any objection to the prosecution marking on your board?
No, I'm just going to mark my tabs. I'm not going to mark their board. $14.92. All right, thank you.
Yeah, remarking, it's just kind of a squiggle. That's an indication of approximation.
Now, when the 1 milliliter was put on for this transaction on the defense board, was that squiggle there?
No, it was not.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention next to the date of June the 27th, when you did some testing.
Okay.
That's to item 17. How much did you use? And when I say use, I'm talking not only about what was consumed in the tests, but in total.
No foundations.
You've asked this question already.
I believe you testified it was between 0.5 milliliters and
Sustained.
1 milliliter. Is that correct?
Sustained. It's leading. We've asked this question.
Let's take the higher of the two sums, 1 milliliter. Is that an exact sum or an approximation?
That's not new.
Sustained.
No, that's
Sustained. Don't argue with me, counsel.
Mr. Matheson. Could you have used as much as 1 milliliter in total with respect to that transaction?
Objection calls for speculation.
Leading as well. Sustained.
How much is the maximum amount you could have used in connection with that transaction?
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
Conservatively, about 1 milliliter.
Okay, and is that an exact figure or an estimate?
It's an approximation.
And can you place another milliliter on the board and also place one of the squiggles on it to indicate approximation? When you use the term conservatively, Mr. Matheson, did you mean that it could be slightly more than that or slightly less than that?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you mean when you said what did you mean when you said conservatively?
I believe the question was a maximum amount I could have used. It could have been a little bit higher than that, which is why I said conservatively 1 milliliter.
But could have it also been less?
Yes.
Objection, strike, no foundation.
Overruled.
Now, Mr. Matheson, at the time that there was a period of time when you spoke to Mr. Regal about this transaction, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
At that time, did you have a clear independent recollection as to exactly what you did in terms of removing blood from the vial for your testing on the 27th?
No, I did not.
And were you trying to make clear mental notes of that at the time on the 27th?
No, I was not.
Now, directing your attention next to the date of June the 25th that you testified about. On that date, Mr. Yamuchi did some testing, is that correct?
Yes, he did.
And according to the records that you previously read, did he state that he used 0.75, or did he have one of the squiggles in his notes?
I believe there was an approximation mark on it.
Okay, now when the defense put their sticker on the chart, did their sticker for that contain the approximation that Mr. Yamuchi wrote in his notes?
No, it did not.
So was the sticker from the defense a accurate representation of what was reflected in Mr. Yamuchi's records?
Objection, argument.
Sustained.
Was the sticker correct?
No.
No foundation.
Overruled.
As per what was written in the notes, no.
Sir, could you now place a 0.75 sticker on the chart and give us an approximation, one of the approximation signs? Your Honor, we have permission to lower the chart a little at this time for my next set of questions, since the bottom has become slightly less relevant.
Slightly.
Either that or we're going to need a poll.
All right. How about right there?
Now, with respect to the next date, June the 20th, did you place a sticker on when the defense was questioning you for 0.70, to your recollection?
Yes, I believe we did.
Do you know where that number comes from?
It was reflective of what toxicology did. I am not aware of the exact number.
But did you find an actual record that contained that 0.70?
I don't believe so, no.
And do you have any personal knowledge of exactly how that 0.70 was arrived at?
No, I do not.
Okay. Are any of your measures that you do in the laboratory accurate to within 0.1 milliliters generally?
Any measurement? Oh,
Well, measurements of blood from a vial in connection with transactions such as the ones they do in toxicology.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, so this 0.7, wherever it came from, then is not an exact figure. Is that correct?
Objection.
Speculative. Sustained.
Sir, based upon your understanding of the practices in toxicology, is that an exact figure as in 0.70000?
Objection. Speculation.
Sustained.
Sir, do you have any personal knowledge of how exact that figure is?
No, I do not.
So at this point, we have no way of reconstructing. You have no way of reconstructing whether it was 0.7 or 0.8 or 0.9 or 0.5, do you?
Objection, argument.
Sustained.
Do you have any personal knowledge of whether it was any of those sums?
Objection, asked and answered.
No, it's a different question. Only slightly.
What I know about the 0.7 is what was discussed here in the courtroom the other day.
No personal knowledge.
That's correct.
All right, well, let's just take the 0.7, if we have one, and put that back up on the blood vial chart.
adding on to the approximation sign.
And do you have any personal knowledge as to how much would have been lost in the transaction relating to this 0.7 milliliters, if it was 0.7 milliliters?
For just this one transaction, no, I do not.
Now, Mr. Matheson, going to the next date of June the 14th, according to your records that you looked at yesterday during cross-examination, did Mr. Yamauchi use 1 milliliter for swatching? Approximately 1 milliliter.
Approximately one, yes.
And in his notes, did he have one of the squiggles to indicate it was an approximation?
I believe so, yes.
When you placed the sticker on the defense chart, did it contain one of those squiggles that was contained in Mr. Yamauchi's notes?
No, it did not.
Was their chart correct in that regard?
Argument sustained.
Now, Mr. Matheson, can you now place a sticker on the chart for 1 milliliter and again place one of the transaction symbols on it? One of the approximation symbols, rather. Now, Mr. Matheson, with respect to each one of the transactions that we've just testified to and that you testified to in cross-examination, the 5 transactions, did you duplicate those transactions last night when you went back to the laboratory after your testimony in court?
I duplicated the actions that would be associated with that type of transaction as they've been described here.
I'm going to object to any further testimony on this improper. Doesn't mirror the conditions that we know.
It's called foundation, counsel.
No foundation.
This is just my first question, Your Honor.
I know, I haven't heard anything else, so I'll take that as a premature objection.
Now, Mr. Matheson, when you say you duplicated them, let's start with the September the 30th, working our way down from bottom to top. September 30th transaction, what did you do?
Well, what I wanted to do was reproduce the way 1 milliliter of blood would be removed from the vial and then placed in another, like the centrifuge tube and released. So I took pipetter, set it to 1 milliliter, removed the cap of the blood vial like I would, using gloves and Kim wipe, laying it on the counter, used the pipetter, removed 1 milliliter, and rather than delivering it to something else, I delivered it back into the tube and then discarded the tip, recapped the blood vial, and that was the completion of that transaction.
And when you started, did you have a certain amount of blood in the blood vial?
Yes, prior to doing any of this, like I described earlier, placed a similar blood vial next to it that was empty, putting them on a table, adding water to it till it was, to the same height, capped that one and set it aside. Marked it as a starting volume.
Isn't there a certain margin of error in that measuring technique as well?
Yes, it's still, you are using your eye, even though you have it on a flat surface, using your eye to fill it up to, as close as possible to the same level. But there is a slight error associated with it.
Okay, and for what purpose were you doing this, by the way?
I had really no strong idea of how much blood might be lost during the course of a number of opening and closing and transactions with the blood vial, and I was curious to find out if it was measurable.
And have any experiments been done, to your knowledge, previously to this to try to calculate what is lost in the transactions, the various transactions associated with the blood vial?
Not to my knowledge.
Now, Mr. Matheson, after you did this replication of the transaction well, let me ask you a few other questions first. In terms of the transaction that you replicated as to the September the 30th transaction, what did you do with the 1 milliliter of blood that was pipetted out?
I returned it back to the blood vial.
I mean, after you were all finished?
Well, I didn't. What I wanted to do was capture the amount that would be used during the transfer process. If I had taken that milliliter of blood, put it into another container, and then returned it a later time or tried to measure that other container, it would have been additional error because there would have been something clinging to it that was not part of the transaction we're trying to duplicate. So I merely, like I said, removed the 1 milliliter, pulled the pipette out of the blood, and then, like I said, depressed the plunger and returned the blood to the same blood vial.
What did you do with the pipette tip, your gloves, and the Kim wipe?
Well, at that point, I didn't change my gloves because I'm working all with the same item. The pipette tip and the Kim wipe that was used to remove the cap and put it back on again, at that point was just placed into a pile in front of me, eventually made its way into a biohazard container.
Okay, now let's go to the June the 27th transaction. What did you do to replicate the blood that you removed from the vial personally for your testing on that date?
Well, in that case, this is the testing that I did. And like I've testified, I don't really remember whether I discarded after removing a portion of the blood to spin down for the ABO test, putting it in a microcentrifuge tube. I don't know if I discarded that complete with all the blood in it, or if I made an attempt to return it back to the blood vial. Wanting to be, as conservative as possible, I assumed that I returned it to the blood vial. So what I did again was took the vial, removed the cap using the Kim wipe and gloves like I've described. I used one of the glass dispo pipettes, because that's the type I used, inserted it into the blood vial, and transferred some of that blood into a microcentrifuge tube. I then capped that tube, put it into a centrifuge to spin it down. I wanted to actually start the process of running an ABO test and place the dirty disposable pipette, I think I testified to before, in a test tube that was sitting also alongside. So now it's just like it's being held there. When the tube,
Ask another question.
What did you do next?
the tube was done centrifuging, brought it back to my work area, removed 3 drops of serum and 3 drops of cells, just as if I was running an ABO test. I then used the glass disposable pipette that I had before, sucked up as much of the blood in the centrifuge tube as I could, returned that to the blood vial, recapped the blood vial, and discarded all the items that have been used during that process.
Okay, now when you say all the items, you mentioned a microcentrifuge tube, a disposable pipette, a test tube, and a Kim wipe. Have I missed anything?
Yes, there is one thing that I left out of that, and that is a very small capillary tube that's used to deliver the small drops for the test.
All right, and the capillary tube. And as to those 5 items, what did you do with those?
They were, again, they're just placed in a pile in front of me to be discarded.
Now, with respect to the June 25th transaction, where Mr. Yamauchi, according to his notes, used approximately 0.75 milliliters, what did you do to replicate that?
In that transaction, I used a disposable pipette rather than the calibrated one, because that is what's used in a situation like this. We're not removing an exact amount. Placed it over, reopened the cap again using the Kim wipe and the gloves, removed a portion into the disposable pipette, pulled it out of the tube, and then returned as much of it as I could back into the vial, recapped the vial, and set it aside, and then disposed of the disposable pipette.
Okay, now let's go through all of the items that you used here that were disposable. There's a disposable pipette, did you say microcentrifuge tube?
For the June 25th?
Yes,
No, just the disposable pipette, that's it.
that's the only thing.
Yes.
All right, and what did you do with the disposable pipette?
Disposed of it, put it on the pile of the stuff that eventually is going to get thrown away.
And did that still have some blood on it or residue of blood when you put it in this disposable vial?
It has some adhering to the inside and a little bit on the outside of the tip.
Now, with respect to the June the 20th transaction in toxicology, what did you do to replicate that?
Basically the same thing that I just described is the one that Mr. Yamauchi was involved in, but rather than using the glass disposable pipette, I used the plastic one like I was shown to you before, because that's the implement they use.
And have you worked with the plastic disposable pipettes before?
Yes, I have.
Do the plastic disposable pipettes have the same amount of blood clinging to them after you're finished as the glass ones?
Oh, it's hard to tell by just looking at them, but just visually it looks like it has a little bit more, but it's not measurable.
So what were the items? Did you use the Kim wipe again in order to open up the vial?
A different one, yes.
Okay. And you used the disposable pipetter.
Yes.
And what else did you use?
In that transaction, that was it.
What did you do with those 2 items?
They were added to the pile of things that are going to be disposed of.
And then, sir, did you do something to replicate the June 14th? Oh, I'm sorry. As to those 2 items, did they still have some blood on them when you added them to the trash pile?
Yes, they did.
Now, did you do something to replicate the June 14th transaction?
Yes, I did.
What?
This is very similar to the first one that was described in the fact that it was mentioned that about 1 milliliter was used for swatching. I used a calibrated, repeatable pipette like we showed you, the Pipette Man. I probably used a different brand. I, again, set the vial up, used the Kim wipe, removed the cap, set that down on the table, used the pipetter to draw up 1 milliliter of blood, pulled it out of the blood, and then returned what was in the pipette tip back to the vial, recapped the vial, and disposed of the tip.
What did you do with the Kim wipe that you used for the purposes of opening up the vial?
It was added to the pile of things to be disposed.
And did both of those two items have some blood on them?
The Kim wipe and the tip, yes, they both still had some.
Now, up to this point, you hadn't changed your gloves. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This was the last transaction that you replicated?
Yes, it was.
Although, did you actually do it in the order that I went through, or did you do it in the other order?
I did it in the reverse order.
Okay. Now, Mr. Matheson, what did you do with the gloves that you were wearing?
Well, when I was all done, I removed them and added them to the pile that was going to be disposed of.
So by now you had a fair pile of disposable items that you'd used in replicating these various transactions that had blood on them.
I had a pile of trash in front of me.
Well, what did you do with that?
That was gathered up and placed into a biohazard trash receptacle that we have.
And was there some blood on each one of those disposable items that you threw away?
Yes,
Now, as a result of this, Mr. Matheson, did you calculate how much blood was lost in the transactions? In other words, as a result of using these various things that were thrown away in the garbage?
yes, I did.
What?
Upon completion of all these, I repeated the measurement step that I did at the beginning, taking a second empty blood vial, placing it alongside of the vial that has the blood in it, filling it to where I could see look like the same level, and I placed the blood vial aside. Now I had a before, beginning, and a completed 2 blood vials that contained equivalent amounts of water to the blood that I saw in the tube at that time.
What was the difference?
It was approximately 0.4 to 0.5 milliliters, or about half a milliliter.
Now, sir, with respect to that figure, is that an exact figure or is that also an approximation?
Definitely not exact. It's an approximation.
So if you were writing it out, would you also put a squiggly in front of it?
Yes, I would.
Now, what was the substance that you used for this? Was it actually blood?
Yes, it was.
Now, Mr. Matheson, when you were doing these series of transactions, were you trying to be extra sloppy in order to spill as much blood as possible? I mean, how were you doing it?
Sustained.
How were you doing it?
I was doing it as close to the way as I would normally do it when I'm doing casework.
All right. And when you're giving this figure, are you saying that that is the amount that would always be lost in the series of transactions, or just your best effort to give us an approximation?
It is an approximation based on the test I ran yesterday.
Now, Mr. Matheson, can you put up a 5 milliliter item onto our board and place one of the squigglies on it to indicate that it's an approximation?
Say 0.5 milliliter.
0.5.
I'm going to put the squiggle on down here.
Now, Mr. Matheson, it's the, with respect to the 2.6 milliliters itself, you took that measurement, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you used the method that you previously described with filling up the vial.
Yes,
So is that an exact measure, or again, does that have a margin of error to it?
it is not exact. It's a approximation.
So if we wanted to make this chart correct, we should also probably have a squiggly in front of that. Is that true?
Yes.
I don't want to write on the defense chart. Can you just add a little squiggly onto the 2.6 milliliters? Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to mark as people's next in order 2 photos. I showed them to counsel yesterday. One is what appears to be the blood vial, and it is standing up with a person's finger on the top, as people's
229, I believe.
229. And it's 228, a picture of what appears to be a microcentrifuge tube,
230, you mean?
and it is also standing up.
230.
I'd like to place 229 on the Alma first. Oh, shoot, we're going to have the file chart again. We lowered it and then back up again. We'll put it on the back to it. Thank you. Mr. Matheson, directing your attention to the vial that's been marked, excuse me, the photograph of the vial that's been marked 228 vial.
I think the photo was 229.
You're right, Your Honor. I'm sorry. 229. It's actually sort of hard to tell for some reason on the Elmo, but in this picture, is this vial actually standing up? Do you need to see the picture?
No, I can, it appears it's standing on, well, it is. It's standing on the bottom part of it with the cap on the top.
Now, Mr. Matheson, was there an occasion where the blood vial was measured by someone else in your presence using a ruler
Yes, there was.
and a notepad?
Yes.
Who did that?
Mark Taylor?
Is he a person who works for SID?
No, he is not.
Who does he work for?
He is a criminalist, works for himself. He's a private.
Was it your understanding he was retained by the defense in this case?
Yes.
Now, when he was measuring this, can you tell us what kind of a ruler he used?
Object is irrelevant.
Oh, well.
It's just a plastic ruler, approximately 15 inches long.
Why is the blood vial standing on a pad of paper?
Well, that particular ruler, like a lot of rulers, the measurement does not start at the end. It's actually inset, I don't know, 3/16 of an inch or a quarter. So if you ding up the end or knock around the end, it doesn't affect your mark or the beginning point. So an attempt was made by using the notepads to bring it up and account for that little bit of the ruler. So the bottom of the tube was at the same height as the bottom of the ruler, or the beginning mark.
Mr. Matheson, doesn't that seem like an extremely inaccurate way of trying to measure the blood vial?
Argumentative.
Sustained.
What is is this the preferable way from a forensic standpoint of measuring a blood vial?
That's not the way.
Objection, move to strike this testimony.
Oh, well.
It was not my choice the way to do it. I preferred the equivalent amounts of water.
Now, Mr. Matheson, when you actually did your own measurement of the blood vial using the technique of equivalent amounts of water, did you actually have to stand the blood vial up similar to as is depicted in this photograph?
Yes, I did.
And when you measured that, did you take into account the amount of blood that is clinging to the inside of the vial?
No, I was measuring the amount that had collected in the bottom.
And if you look at the top of this vial, there appears to be something a little less than, hold on, a quarter of a, it looks like it's a little less than a quarter of an inch or approximately a quarter of an inch of blood that's stuck up towards the top of the vial.
Sustained.
Well, sir, how much, let me take a look at the photograph. Maybe I can show you the photograph. It's hard to tell. May I approach for a second?
You may. I think that's the centimeter
You're right.
scale on the side.
Can you tell us how much the measure is, or the approximate measure is, of the blood that's up towards the top of the vial?
Objection, no foundation.
Sustained.
Is there a ruler right next to it?
Yes, there is.
And using the ruler, can you tell us approximately how much blood you can see in the darkened area at the top of the vial?
Objection, no foundation.
Sustained.
Well, when you saw the vial, was there blood that was stuck up at the top of the vial?
Normally there is. I don't remember if there was on this particular instant.
And how does it,
Non-responsive.
Oh, well.
why is there blood stuck up at the top of the vial? How does it get there?
Well, many times, or usually when the blood vial is being stored, it's in a envelope. A lot of times it's upright. Sometimes it can be upside down or falling on its side. The blood comes in contact with all parts of the inside of the tube, and some of it's going to adhere up around the stopper.
And did you do your measurement of the 2.6 milliliters after the Mark Taylor measurement, to your recall?
I don't remember. I believe it was before.
All right. Now, with respect to do you know whether there was any more removal of blood between the Mark Taylor measurement and your measurement?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And when you measured the vial, did you take into account any blood that was up around the top of the vial?
All I did was measure the part that had settled down in the bottom of the vial.
And Mr. Matheson, are you willing to come to any estimate as to how much blood in this particular picture is at the top of the vial and the inside?
No, I am not.
And is that because you've never made any scientific inquiry to try to find that out?
Sustained.
Why aren't you willing to estimate?
Because I'm not even sure how we'd go about measuring that. It adheres to the vial or the cap. When you pull it off, the cap it may adhere to the cap, may go down the side. I don't think you could do a good measurement of that.
And as a forensic scientist testifying in court under oath, would you be prepared to give what would just constitute a guesstimation of that amount?
Not of that amount, no.
Now, I'd next like to show you the microcentrifuge tube that the photograph of which I've marked as 230 for identification. Sir, before I ask you about this, other than the incident in court the other day, where you were handed a vial of water that purported to contain 8 milliliters and poured it out and saw that it actually measured 7.5. Was it 7.5?
That's what I measured when I poured it, yes.
Other than that, have you ever tried to make any inquiry as to how much blood will stick to the inside of a vial?
No, I have not.
Now, with respect to the microcentrifuge tube, when you looked at the
Say something,
microcentrifuge
Kelly.
tube, did you attempt to measure the amounts of blood that are stuck to the interior portion of the vial over where the blood line itself is, and also the portion up near the cap?
No, I did not. I just measured the amount that settled towards the bottom.
And again, as a forensic scientist, would you be willing to give us any estimations to that amount?
The amount that wasn't measured?
Right.
No, I would not.
Is that for the same reasons that you testified to previously with respect to the blood vial itself?
Yes,
So there's some unknown amount in both vials that you did not measure, is that correct?
that's correct.
And in order to represent the unknown amount, can
I
you
was
just
driving
place
a
the
car,
little white
so I don't know.
Item that's in front of you onto the defense blood vial chart? Maybe we can put the blood vial chart back up. Your Honor, perhaps we could pass around a picture of the vial and the microcentrifuge tube, because they are a little bit difficult to see on the ELMA.
229 and 230.
Yes.
All right, hand them to juror number 1, please. Goldberg, would you collect 229 and 230 from Deputy Russell?
Now, Mr. Matheson, on the chart as it exists right now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers, and all of those are estimations. Is that correct?
Yes,
So would it be fair to suggest that the total number of estimations that we have, we know to be completely accurate?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
What can you say with respect to the accuracy of the total number of these estimations?
I'm not sure what you mean by the accuracy of estimations.
I think you're talking about the precision of measurement.
Well, that they are all estimations. It's give or take a little bit of blood. We don't know exactly how much was used in each of those instances.
And do you agree, Mr. Matheson, that to try to reconstruct and account for every 1/10 of a milliliter of blood, or even quarter or half of a milliliter, would be a hard thing to do?
Sustained.
How hard would it be to try to go back and to account for every half a milliliter of blood?
I think it'd be a very difficult thing to do, to try, and even if you were from the beginning trying to account for every little bit, there are aspects of this that are very difficult to measure, and it would be hard to account for every portion of blood that's used in this type of testing.
And in any past case that you are aware of, has SID ever attempted to do that, to account for every half milliliter of blood in a test tube?
No, we have not.
And why not?
I think we've asked this
Okay.
question before. Why
Now-
don't we move on?
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Matheson, understanding that these numbers that you've provided are estimations, can you calculate the total estimated amount of blood on this chart under these conditions?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
If you have a calculator, you could use that too. That'd be faster.
Well, the final figure that I come up,
No foundation.
Overruled.
the final figure that I have by adding up the numbers that we have up there is approximately 7.5 milliliters.
And Mr. Matheson, there is then, in addition to that amount of blood that's occupied by what we have in this diagram is the white space, which you have not provided us any number for. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So under our estimation, we have approximately 7.5 plus this unknown amount.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Matheson, I want you to assume, hypothetically, that at the time that the blood vial was drawn, that there was an estimation between 6.5 and 7 milliliters of blood being in a vial. Or to keep the math simple, let's assume it was 7 milliliters of blood.
Facts, not evidence. Improper hypothetical.
Sustained.
It was the same hypothetical they gave, Your Honor.
Different hypothetical.
Sir, if you were to assume, for the sake of this hypothetical, that at the time the blood were drawn, there was 7 milliliters of blood.
All right,
We started.
let me see counsel at the sidebar with the report, please.
I want to see some screaming and yelling right now.
Mr. Goldberg.
Sir, your own margin of error, you said, in visually approximating what is in a blood vial, just visually, was upwards of 1.8 milliliters? 1.8 milliliters or more, did you say?
Well, in the particular instance that we mentioned, when I estimated to begin with, I was 1.8 off, yes.
Now, let's assume hypothetically that the blood vial in this case had 7 milliliters at the time that it started out at the scientific investigations, at the time it was drawn. Would that mean that under our hypothetical of the set of numbers that we came up with, that there would be an approximately 0.55 milliliters of blood? Too much.
Approximately a half a milliliter, 0.5, yes.
Well, Mr. Matheson, when you go back to the laboratory, are you going to launch an investigation to determine whether someone added more of the
Sustained.
defendant's blood to the vial?
Sustained.
Now, Mr. Matheson, you were asked about EDTA yesterday. You remember that?
Yes.
And is the blood vial in this case that was used contain Mr. Simpson?
Yesterday, because too many stupid questions happened between then and now.
Is blood, in fact, an EDTA vial?
Yes, it is.
And it's your understanding that that is an anticoagulant, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, is it also your understanding, Mr. Matheson, that this anticoagulant is one that can be tested for?
As I mentioned, the fact that it is a chemical, there are instruments available. I would assume they can test for it.
And did you cause the blood vial to be sent to the FBI along with items 13, the socks, and the items from the rear gate for the purposes of EDTA testing?
I don't believe I was directly involved with it, but it was sent.
Do you have any personal knowledge of that being done?
As far as having physical, I've seen records to that effect. I have not.
All right, jury is to disregard the last question and answer.
And is it your understanding, Mr. Matheson, is it your understanding that if blood were taken from a EDTA vial and planted somewhere, you should be able to find it?
Yeah, no foundation. Sustained.
Now, Mr. Matheson, when you testified as to the people's evidence disposition summary, did that reflect a transaction where certain items were sent to the FBI for purposes of EDTA testing?
Objection. No foundation. Ask and answer. Sustained.
Now, Mr. Matheson, have you heard that according to the report of the EDTA testing,
Sustained.
Mr. Matheson, hypothetically, if the FBI testing showed that there was no
Objection.
EDTA,
Sustained. Sustained. Counsel, ladies and gentlemen, you were to completely disregard that last series of questions and answers regarding EDTA.
can we approach on that, Your
No,
Honor?
you may not. Proceed.
Sir, are you aware of any evidence of EDTA in item 13, 15, 16, or 17?
Objection. Overruled. Did you do any testing on that yourself? Yes or no?
No, I did not.
Next question.
May I have one moment, Your Honor? Now, sir, do you recall answering a question on cross-examination, a hypothetical question involving if there were EDTA on the socks and the rear gate, what effect that would have?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you know what the basis for that hypothetical was?
Objection. No foundation. Any others? Sustained.
Are you aware of any facts that constituted the basis of that hypothetical?
Objection. No foundation. Sustained. It's not a proper question regarding hypotheticals.
Sir, if the facts of their hypothetical were changed so as to indicate that the testing revealed the absence of EDTA.
Sustained. Counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, we're going to take a brief recess right now. Please remember all of my
I was
admonitions to
thinking
you.
the same thing. That's
I'm sure you
exactly
take
what I
them to
thought.
heart. Take a recess for 15 minutes as far as the jury is concerned. Mr. Matheson, you can step down.
And when he said any more, I would have said all objections. all objections. They brought up EDTA in their hypothetical. They actually did. So I have no idea why he is not allowed to. I'm trying to figure it out.
Your Honor, and I agree that it would have been appropriate to have sustained the objections to the
Hey,
questions that they
Debs.
asked. But I also believe that the objections to the questions that they asked exactly along this line and the hypothetical they gave exactly along this line, where they stated that there was no EDTA, and if there was no EDTA, would that indicate that it came from the blood vial? And the witness answered yes, should have been sustained, and they weren't. And under the doctrine that we have discussed before of curative admissibility and the open the door issue, and this isn't even open the door, I objected to them. My objections were overruled. The people should be allowed to go into this. The jury should not be left with the impression that there is a factual basis and a good faith basis for counsel's questions when they know that they are contrary to the testing that was performed by the FBI. And if the court would like, we can go and try to find the exact questions, and there were a series of them that were asked by the defense in the record.
Mr. Glazier?
You know, we strenuously object. Mr. Goldberg has just acknowledged that he asked questions that he knew was improper, and every time he does it, he turns to face the jury, and you can tell from the first 3 words of the question that they're improper. He knows they're improper. He's experienced enough to know that, and we object to that. The hypotheticals we asked, he objected to. You sustained, or you overruled the objections. We're allowed to ask the hypotheticals. You've sustained all these questions. He continues to ask them. We would ask that some appropriate sanction be imposed.
Mr. Goldberg, any response? I'm concerned about your admission that you knew that this question was
Sanctions.
improper.
Your Honor, wait a minute. I have always tried to be very candid with the court. And in instances such as the staple issue, I told the court exactly what I was thinking. It would be intellectually dishonest for me to say that giving a hypothetical to a witness of facts related to testing that he doesn't know of would be a proper hypothetical question. But the court also knows that I have disagreed about a lot of the hypothetical questions that have been given by the defense and by both sides. And what I'm saying is that the court apparently has a different view than I do as to the propriety of certain hypothetical questions. And I am practicing law in this court under Your Honor's rules. And if the court allowed, and you did allow them to ask what now Mr. Blazer is by implication admitting he knew to be improper, because he asked the same series of questions that I did, with one distinction, and that is that he knew that there was no good faith basis for his questions, and he knew that they were contrary to the testimony that is eventually going to be introduced, then I believe under the rules, as Your Honor has set them forth, and Your Honor does have discretion in this, I'm not saying the court is wrong.
Wide discretion.
Wide discretion. If the court has found in a proper exercise of its discretion they can ask the question, then I can ask the question. That does not mean that I personally, as an advocate, think that either side should have been allowed to ask. But it means that under the rules that have been imposed here by Your Honor, using the discretion that is inherent with this court, that I believe that that was a proper question with respect to the rulings that have previously been made on that issue.
The problem I have with your hypotheticals, Mr. Goldberg, is that they bring in as hearsay EDTA testing results. That's the problem.
But the way I phrased my question, some of them may have been
About
phrased.
the only EDTA question that appears to be proper in this line of questioning is how much is the standard amount of EDTA in one of these vacutainers, and how much would that add to the blood volume in this case? But apparently nobody wants to ask the only obvious question that this jury is interested in hearing. And I don't know if you're watching the jury at all, but they're rolling their eyes every time we get to the fifth or sixth question that's been re-asked and asked again. And this dueling hypothetical questions is really argument at this point, counsel.
Your Honor, if the court were going to
We're
strike
in recess.
Thank you.
And out of nowhere, we get spicy. He's right. Goldberg is right. I'm sorry. I think he's correct. I wonder if Goldberg is going to ask the question the judge told them to ask. Probably not. I'm going with the big fat no. He's
Well,
going
take
to
up the issue I
keep
wanna talk
going
about
on
first.
this.
Okay. As to the items that counsel now wants to show the defense, many of these are beyond the scope of this witness's direct testimony and redirect testimony, and are also perhaps beyond the scope of his expertise. Evidently, in the A1 portion of the chart, if the court has a copy in front of it, and 2B, what's being depicted there are DQ alpha results, in other words, DNA results, and showing patterns of inheritance with DNA results. We haven't gone into that at all. In fact, I never mentioned patterns of inheritance at all. The only
I would have to change my whole channel name and start over from scratch if Kelly wasn't blue. It absolutely would not be court vibes anymore. Not even a little bit.
time that was gone into was in cross-examination from Mr. Blazer, and I did not even mention it directly, indirectly, in any other way during recross. So it's beyond the scope of his expertise. And
All right, 1A and 2B, let's take these up one of the.
3C appears to be a statement of the cathodal to anodal pattern of degradation that's suggested by Mr. Saperstein and Sensabaugh. I didn't show this to Mr. Matheson, so I'm not positive whether this is correct, because I didn't know whether I was allowed to. But it's possible that I might not have an objection to that, because it could be a correct statement or correct block diagram depicting
It
the
appears to be an
Saperstein.
accurate description of as it was described in the testimony.
That's my feeling.
All right.
4D appears to be containing an issue that should be gone into with the DNA witnesses. What is trying to be depicted here is that EAP would be found in red blood cells, whereas the cells containing the DNA do not contain EAP. And this is something that can be explored elsewhere. I did not mention it in any way during my redirect examination. It's beyond the scope. It's beyond the scope of the witness's expertise.
5E.
This is dealing with DNA results and the like. So again, same objections. Code of ethics. I don't know what the suggestion is here that Mr. Matheson has violated the code of ethics. I don't see anything inconsistent, of course, with this testimony. And it appears to be argumentative, and also it's hearsay under 721. So I'd object to the usage of those provisions. And then it might also necessitate bringing out other provisions of the Code of Ethics dealing with the reporting of inconclusive results and showing that his reporting of the inconclusive results is in fact consistent with the Code of Ethics. So it opens up a whole new area that we haven't gone into. As I understand it, Your Honor, the remaining items here are simply larger versions of what we've already gone over.
Mr. Blazer.
As to A and B, Mr. Goldberg asked on redirect, and I asked the court reporter to provide me with a copy of this. They don't have the full transcript yet, so this is probably not the page number that's going to be on the full transcript. But the question was asked, now, when you were testifying on cross-examination, at one point you said that biological contamination, in other words, contamination of one type of blood with another type of blood, would not change the type of the blood that was contaminated. What did you mean? Answer, well, you're not going to, the type of blood isn't going to change. It will still be what it always was. That's the nature of the genetic markers that we deal with as a rule. So by introducing another one, it will not change it. It may overpower it, or it may degrade it, or something else like that, but it will not change it. These two charts are I want to ask him questions about that answer, and to demonstrate that half of the answer is inaccurate, that you can have it overpower it or degrade it like he's testified and have a different type show up. Chart number C.
How do these two charts demonstrate that?
Well, he's already testified about you get one allele from mom, one allele from dad. We talked about in the context of EAP and DQ alpha as well. So you know what the type of the child is by what type of the parent is. And I'm going to ask him some questions about if you mix some blood from person A and person B together, you're going to get a type that's a combination of both of those, which is different from the type of either one of them.
So you're suggesting in these charts that these mixtures are actually mixtures of bodily fluids?
Yes, blood.
All right.
And chart number 3C is that's simply the degradation chart with, that's exactly what he testified to, that Saperstein says is there's one other route of degradation that would give you just the higher B band. The red blood cell chart, that's just straight science. I'm sure Mr. Matheson knows that EAP is found in red blood cells that don't have any DNA. Chart number 5.
What's the relevance to this?
Well, because the relevance is you can't, you can do all sorts of other tests other than EAP, and you're never going to be able to rule out that the EAP came from someone who was a B. The other tests won't allow you to do that. You have to, the only way to do that is to retest the EAP. And chart number 5 is simply to show that if you have fingernail scrapings, they are going to contain material, obviously from the person whose fingernails they are, including skin cells. The fingers are made up of cells, the fingernails are made up of cells, and they contain DNA.
So this is the same argument that EAP is separate from DNA testing?
Yeah, similar. Yeah. And then the two code of ethics provisions I provided yesterday.
All right. All right, the objections will be overruled. All right, I'm sorry.
Can I respond to those?
I heard the arguments.
Okay, what about the issue that the court, the
All right,
other
as
issues?
to the hypothetical questions, you want to direct my attention, Mr. Goldberg, to the location in the transcript?
I'm looking at page 51.
Which volume?
Well, it's yesterday's transcript. I don't have the volume number.
Mrs. Robertson? Mr. Thomas Olson, I need the transcript, please.
To the next two witnesses this morning, may I release them? One, two, anybody?
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair guess.
Thank you.
And Mr. Goldberg, you want to direct my attention to which one we're talking about?
I'm looking at line 21 on page 55,
Page 55?
where does the court want me to read
Why
it?
don't you read it to me?
Mr. Blazer, hypothetically, Mr. Matheson, if blood from this case, from an evidence item such as from the back gate, showed the presence of a chemical EDTA, would you agree that it is consistent with it possibly coming from a reference file? Then there's an objection. That's an improper hypothetical. It's inconsistent with the known facts. Overruled. Witness, as you stated it, if it was present and if it was able to be identified in it, it is possible that it could have come from some type of reference sample that previously contained EDTA.
So you want to ask the hypothetical, assuming the same facts, except no EDTA is found.
Yes. And then there was actually a second hypothetical, which I also objected to in a similar vein.
And I would object to that hypothetical for lack of foundation. The foundation being that testing can only determine whether something, can only detect something that's there. If they get no results on a test, that doesn't mean it's not there. If he modifies it to that extent, then I have no problem with it.
What?
All right, but what's the good faith basis of your offer, Mr. Goldberg, that there's no EDTA in?
The good faith basis of my offer is that in reading the FBI report, that's what it says. That is what the verbal description of their testing says.
The verbal
The written description of the testing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Okay. I will allow that one hypothetical question as phrased.
Okay, I'll phrase it almost identically to what the defense did, except not.
I'm going until the end
All
of
right,
this
for the record,
video.
I'm prepared to state what my good
So-
faith basis for asking that question was. And that is that our experts have looked at the FBI
30 more
results
minutes.
and have said it's present.
So I assumed, given the nature of our discussions and the other things that have gone on, that you had a good faith basis for asking this.
Yes.
I didn't ask for that.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you for providing that to me, but I didn't need it.
We have a discovery issue that just arose a few seconds ago. In the
That
last
appears to be so too,
Yes.
but let's take that up after we finish with the jury this morning.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, sort of piqued my interest as well. All right, Deputy Magnar, let's have the jurors, please. Deputy Russell, I need Mr. Matheson, please. All right. All right, Mr. Matheson, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, Mr. Goldberg, you may conclude your redirect.
Thank you. We are trying to run out on us, Mr. Matheson.
No, I was standing right in front of the door.
Mr. Matheson, I just want to ask you, hypothetically, if blood from this case, hypothetically, if blood from this case, from an evidence item, such as from the back gate, showed no presence of a chemical EDTA, would you agree that that is inconsistent with it possibly coming from the reference file?
Yes, I would.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matheson. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, Mr.
No further
Blazier.
questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Mr. Matheson, would you agree that tests that are performed to determine whether something is present or not can only determine that if there's a certain amount of something present? In other words, if there's something less than the sensitivity of the test, you won't detect it, correct?
Over.
Yes, if it's below the detectability limit of that test, you won't see it.
So something, it could be present, but your test won't show it.
If it's below that level, yes.
I'm sorry. Is it possible for us to document in some way the way that the vial appears now before council? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Matheson, you were asked a number of questions about an experiment that you performed last night. Call that.
Yes.
Now, when you performed that experiment, did you videotape or take any photographs of what you were doing?
No, I did not. I was the only one left in the lab.
Did you invite anybody from the defense to observe?
No, I did not.
And a lot of the numbers that you've used for purposes of your demonstration are numbers based on your guess as to how someone else may have done withdrawals at particular times, correct?
Sustain, rephrase the question.
You had no personal knowledge of how a number of the withdrawals that you testified about were actually done, correct?
I had personal knowledge because I was involved in at least two of them. The other ones, no.
Now, when we visited the lab in January, Mr. Taylor did his measurements with the ruler. You recall that?
Yes, I do.
That was after you had done your precise measurement of 2.6 milliliters, wasn't it?
It was after I did my measurement, yes.
Were you asked any questions at all by me or Mr. Goldberg about any measurement that resulted from a photograph with a ruler?
No,
When we were in the lab, were we permitted to open up the blood and take the blood out?
no, you were not.
Now, you testified previously that your records indicate that as of June 20th, according to toxicology, there's 5.5 milliliters in that too, correct?
That's what was in it on that form, yes.
And that's as of June 20th. At that time, there had only been one withdrawal from that blood vial that we know about, correct? From the records.
That's correct.
And assuming again, hypothetically, that you started with 8, Mr. Yamauchi indicated that approximately 1 milliliter was taken out for typing, correct?
Yes.
Incidentally, you don't need nearly 1 milliliter to do the kind of typing you did, do you?
The kind of typing who did?
Mr. Yamauchi did on the 14th.
Not relevant beyond the scope.
Overruled.
Well, actually, I believe the reference was that he used a milliliter for swatching, not just for his testing.
Okay. Now, for the type of swatching that he did, do you need a milliliter or do you actually use a lot less?
Calls for speculation.
If you know.
Well, my understanding is you use a milliliter for those Fitzco cards, the ones that we demonstrated before.
Okay. Now, would you agree that under the hypothetical, as of June 20th, there is 1.5 milliliters, Mr. Simpson's blood, that according to your records, and assuming my hypothetical of starting with 8, that are not there at that point?
Argumentative.
Overruled.
With all the assumptions in place, yes, it would be approximately 1.5.
And as of that date, there's only been one pipetter that went into that tube according to the records, correct?
That's correct.
And did you, in the course of your experiment, did you determine how much you would have lost by putting a pipetter in one time to determine how much of that 1.5 milliliters would have been used up that way?
No, I didn't. Just the aggregate of all the ones.
Certainly, it would be an extremely small amount. Would you agree?
It would be small, yes.
Would you also agree that the pipetters that are used, well, let me ask you this. How much do the pipetters that you've demonstrated to us hold?
No foundation.
Overruled.
Which pipetters are we talking about?
Well, do you know what kind of pipetter Mr. Yamauchi used?
For his 1 milliliter?
Yes.
No, I do not.
The $300 pipetter that you showed us this morning has a plastic tip on it, correct?
Yes, it does.
And do you know who manufactures that plastic tip?
No, it's called an art tip, ART, but I don't know. I can't think of the manufacturer right now.
Are you aware that some plastic tips have a coating on it to prevent liquids from adhering to them?
Assumes facts, not in evidence.
Overruled.
I don't know if they're specifically coated with anything. No.
But are you aware that plastic tips that blood or other fluids don't adhere to plastic tips as they might to glass?
Assumes facts, not in evidence.
Overruled. You know that?
I'd say it depends on the plastic, depends on the glass.
Now, using the $300 pipetter, how much does that plastic tip hold?
Well, the pipetter that I demonstrated here is a 1,000 microliter or 1 ml capacity. When you draw it up, there's a little space on top of it. So, but you don't want to use, I mean, that's your maximum is 1 milliliter, but it could hold a little more.
And the little plastic one with the bulb built into the top, how much does that hold?
I don't know.
Is there a marking on there to indicate 1 milliliter?
I could take a look at the one we have and see if it says
Okay.
something on it. No, I don't see any markings on it at all.
Now, the glass one that doesn't have the bulb on it, does that have any markings on it?
No.
Would you agree that a trained forensic scientist who intended to draw 1 milliliter out of a blood vial would know the difference between 1 milliliter and 2.5 milliliters?
Calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Yes, I would think so.
Because the back gate is a tricky subject. So on the day the police first came out to the murder scene, Mark Furman saw a stain on the back gate. All right, he saw blood on the back gate. So then he goes to OJ's house with the detectives, and he's, getting evidence there too. And then he sits down to write out his notes of everything so far. And while he's writing out his notes, the detectives come in and say, "You know what? You don't get this case anymore. It's been shipped over to homicide. So, finish your notes. You're done." So he finishes his notes, and in his notes he says there was blood on the back gate. And then he hands his notes off to the detectives. Well, nobody at the crime scene that day saw that blood except for Mark Furman. None of the detectives read his note about the back gate for 2 months. And then 2 months after they've collected all the evidence at the scene, they go back and they get this back gate. So then they collect the blood off the back gate 2 months later. So they're talking about EDT because they're saying that, because they're talking about the preservative that's in these little tubes. Because what they're saying is that somebody took 1.5 milliliters of O.J. Simpson's blood and went and planted that evidence. That's why it's missing. And if there's so much of that preservative in the blood that was found on the gate that proves that someone had taken it from the vial and planted it there, and it just didn't come out like straight out of his body or their body or whatever. So that's where they're trying to go. I don't know if they ever get there. I have no idea, but that's where they're trying to go.
Now, you indicated that when you take the tops off of these purple pop vials, a lot of times you get blood that comes out of them, correct?
Well, I think I mentioned that there's some adhering to the cap, and when you remove it, some of the times that gets transferred onto Kimway.
And are you aware of what's known as an aerosol effect?
Goes beyond the scope of the request.
Yes, I am.
What is that?
Well, it's when you apply some force or something with the liquid, it forces it out in very small droplets.
And almost like a spray, if you had a spray bottle of something.
Yeah, that's an aerosol effect too. You're taking and squirting a spray bottle and putting it into the air.
And that blood would have DNA in it, correct?
Beyond the scope.
Oh,
The blood that is aerosolized?
Yes.
Yes.
And you used the term in your redirect testimony, splattering, correct? You remember using that term?
Blood spatter, yes.
No, I think it was splattering.
in what context, counsel?
In terms of when you open the tube, having blood come off of the top.
I think he's already described that.
Okay. Now, when we were at the lab in January, Mr. Taylor, myself, and several others, we asked you specific questions about the withdrawals from this reference tube, didn't we?
I believe so, yes.
And you told us that when you did your withdrawal on the 27th, you put what you didn't use back, correct?
Oh, well, I assume this is foundational for something else.
Yes, I did, but I believe I probably qualified it with, to the best of my knowledge or something like that.
You remember doing that? You remember putting any qualifications on it at all?
No, but I normally do if I don't have very specific memory of something.
Was your recollection better in January than it is today as to whether you put the blood back?
Rephrase the question.
You wouldn't have told us that you put it back if that wasn't your recollection, would you?
Assumes facts not in evidence.
It's argumentative the way it's phrased.
When you talked to us, did you tell us to the best of your knowledge what you had done with the blood that you used?
Overruled.
Yes, I did.
Now, do you recall us having a discussion about how much was used in toxicology and where that .70 figure came from?
Are we talking about in court?
No, I'm sorry, in January.
No, I do not.
Now, the microcentrifuge tube, that's the tube that went to toxicology, correct?
I believe it's the one that was prepared by them.
And that holds a maximum of 1.5, correct?
That's correct.
And by your measurements, when it got back and got put back in the envelope, it had 0.8 left, didn't it?
I believe so, yes.
And that would indicate, would it not, that 0.7 was no longer there.
That's correct.
You remember a discussion at that same meeting? Incidentally, Mr. Yamauchi was present as well, wasn't he?
He might have been. He was involved in a number of those.
And do you recall a discussion at that time that involved him about how much he actually withdrew on the 27th? I'm sorry, the 25th.
Sustained.
Do you recall during that meeting taking any issue with anything that Mr. Yamauchi said about what he had done?
Overruled.
Now, what does the term examiner bias mean?
Overruled.
Well, my understanding of that would be is that examiner being the person that's doing the work, I can have a certain bias or slant or something along that line that exists within them.
Is another way of stating that sometimes an examiner might come to the conclusion that he thinks he's supposed to come to, not necessarily fraudulently or, but just because you know the result and you tend to see what you think is supposed to be there. You understand what I just said?
Not really, no.
I don't think I did either. Doesn't that mean that your preconceived idea of what the test result should be has been shown by studies to possibly affect the result that you actually see?
Beyond the scope of this witness's expertise.
Sustained the way that's phrased.
Well, tell us what you mean by the term examiner bias.
Well, if a person has a bias, then they have a preconceived notion or leaning towards one particular idea or something.
And one of the techniques, and I think you testified about this in terms of how much information you know versus not having any information, is to read test results in a blind sense where you don't know anything else about the rest of the case, so you don't have any preconceived idea of what the answer is supposed to be. Correct?
That's correct.
Now, you remember the cranberry juice we talked about, Mr. Goldberg, asked you about a little while ago?
Yes, I do.
And I represented to you when we did that little experiment that it started with 8 milliliters, correct?
Yes, you did.
Now, when you look at a tube, we measured that in a little graduated container, correct?
Yes,
You recognize that as the type of container that you use if you want to measure quantities, or one of the types, correct?
it's one of the types available. Yes,
And when you pour something in there and you hold it up and you estimate how much is in there, you look at the liquid and you compare it to the markings on the tube, correct?
that's correct.
And when you looked at that, did you take your measurement from withdraw? When liquid is in a tube like that, a relatively small tube, it tends to bow down in the middle, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So if you take a measurement from the bottom of the bow, it's going to be different from the top of the bow, isn't it?
Talking about the meniscus?
Meniscus.
Yes, if you take it from the top, you're supposed to take it from the bottom of the meniscus.
Now, if I indicated to you hypothetically that when I measured the 8, I took it from the top, that would have been an incorrect way to measurement.
Sustained.
You'd get a difference if you measured it from the top versus the bottom.
Of the meniscus, yes.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you a couple questions about security at the lab. Now, the computer printouts that you identified and testified to on redirect only include lists of employees who may have entered those rooms by presenting their ID card, correct?
That's correct.
And anybody who initially enters that unit that may have somebody else with them when they go in, that second person's not going to show up on any record anywhere, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, the times that we've been out there where you've shown us that room, our names don't appear on any computer printout as a result of going into that room, correct?
Right, because you're not issued a card.
And that particular, and for instance, on the morning of this June 14th, if Detective Lang was in that room, he doesn't show up on any printout either, does he?
No, his name wouldn't show up. He doesn't have a security card for our facility.
Incidentally, the detectives that you work with in robbery homicide, for instance, they know where the evidence processing room is, don't they?
I don't think all of them would. Ones that have been in our facility would.
And when you dry the blood swatches, they're always dried in that cabinet up on the wall, aren't they?
That's our designated drying spot, yes.
And the records that you testified to only show when a door is opened, correct?
Actually, it only shows when somebody displays their card, it reads the card, then it unlocks it.
Now, is there any record in the computer when somebody who is inside the room goes out?
No, there's not.
So those records, there's no way you can tell from those records.
I'm always off topic, always, especially when it's going on and on like this. It's very difficult to stay on topic. My mind is already going to 10 different places.
How long people who went in at a particular time stayed there?
That's correct.
Now, the garage door that we've been referring to, the roll-up door, does that require any kind of card entry from the outside?
That door does not require a card to open it up, no.
So if that door were open, there would be no record, no computer record of who might have gone in that door or who might have gone out of it.
Well, to open that door, we'd have a record of who was in the evidence processing room.
Do we have to say that? Sorry, off topic? Nah, you don't have to say that. Just talk. Because then we'll waste all this time saying off topic. We're always off topic. Always. So speaking of off top, no, just kidding.
Because that's where you open it from. Once it was open, no, that we would not have a record of
Well,
that.
I'm sorry, are you done?
Yes.
Let's assume that you have Mr. Fung come into the evidence processing room with somebody with him. Now that entry would show up, and it would show up as Mr. Fung, correct?
That's correct.
And then the door is open and Mr. Fung leaves, but the second person stays. There'd be no record that the second person was in there alone, would there?
That's correct.
Now, the documents that you testified to are only authorized entries into that room, correct?
Yes.
If somebody was able to get into that room who was unauthorized without triggering the computer system, there'd be no record of that, correct?
Not on that printout, no.
Now, you also indicated on redirect that Now, you asked a question about evidence
Sanctions.
possibly being moved from a crime scene. You recall that? In terms of whether there's full documentation by taking pictures?
Oh, as to whether or not it had been moved from its original location prior to collection?
Correct.
Yes, I do.
And you recall stating that as long as you had a picture of it before it was moved and a picture of it after, then that would be sufficient documentation for you.
Sustain.
Well, you recall making a statement about the fact that if you had a picture of it in its original position and a picture of it later when it may have been moved, that, in your view, was sufficient documentation of that item.
It's sufficient documentation of the fact that it had moved, yes.
Tells you nothing about what was done with it between the first picture and the second picture, does it?
That's correct.
Tells nothing about whether someone picked it up, took it someplace, held it, and then put it back, does it?
Sustain.
Now, you were asked some questions on redirect about the blanket. And you recall testifying that you wouldn't have collected that. And one of the reasons being that it appeared to have just the victim's blood on it. Remember saying that?
Sustain.
You recall,
It's incomplete.
you recall the reasons why? Tell us the reasons that you told us yesterday as to why you wouldn't have collected that blanket.
Overruled.
Well, I believe I said I probably wouldn't. You know, it depends. There is some variation in how we work when we're out in the field. And I think the reasons that come to mind is that it is an item that was brought into the scene after the fact. It was not present when the crime occurred. And that, you know, if you're visually looking at it and it is very heavily bloodstained, have been being placed, known to have been placed over the victim, their assumption is the majority of the blood on there is going to be from the victim. And it does not have a lot of evidentiary value associated with it.
I don't trust anybody who, when talking about blood, says splatter, because that means they have never watched Dexter. And I think if you haven't watched Dexter, I can't trust you as a human.
Now, let's assume hypothetically that there were drops of blood on the victim's shoulder area from some source other than the victim, and a blanket was put over top of that. Could that blood have transferred to the blanket?
It's a hypothetical question. Overruled.
If that blood is damp, yes, it could transfer to the blanket.
So under that hypothetical, that blanket, if that indeed happened, could have contained the blood of someone other than the victim.
Given the hypothetical, yes.
Now, you were asked some questions on redirect about getting to the crime scene before the coroner. You recall those?
I believe there was some, yes, about when the coroner should be called and the body's removed.
Now, you also were asked some questions about whether it's preferable to process a crime scene during daylight hours or during nighttime hours, correct?
Yes.
Do you have any information indicating that the reason the detectives did not call CID or SID for 7 hours had anything to do with processing the crime scene in daylight hours versus nighttime hours?
Argumentative. Calls for your saying.
Calls for speculation.
Yep, psychotic. Yep.
I think you indicated that at some point detectives may decide to process a crime scene themselves,
Yes, that does occur.
including making swatches.
Yes.
Overruled.
Including logging evidence.
Yes.
Do you have any information indicating that the detectives that were at the Bundy scene between approximately 12 and when SID arrived later that morning processed any evidence that they recorded?
Overruled. The jurors know what time, the time sequence. Any evidence of that, to your knowledge?
Not that I can recall at this moment.
Now, you're also asked on redirect examination if you had seen any evidence or indication of evidence being tampered in this case. You remember being asked that?
Yes.
Now, would you agree that by your testimony, you don't know how many swatches were collected, so you cannot tell us if the number of swatches that are in the evidence now is the same number as the number of swatches collected originally?
Asked and answered, argumentative, beyond the scope.
Overruled.
That's correct.
Now, you learned at some point that Andrea Mazzola's initials were not on many of the bindles that relate to the blood drops that were collected.
Calls for your say vague is too many, beyond the scope.
Overruled.
You became aware of that, did you not?
I believe so, yes.
In fact, you became aware that her initials didn't appear on any of the bindles, correct?
Overruled. Were you aware of that?
That they didn't appear on any of them?
Yes.
Not as I'm remembering right now.
And would you agree that, but you were also aware of Andrea Mazzola's testimony at the so-called split hearing in August, I believe?
Sustained.
You indicated you were asked some questions about contamination and an article by Bruce Bedoli of the FBI. You recall those questions?
Yes, I do.
And do you recall making a statement yesterday in redirect to the effect that contamination becomes a problem if it's occurring and you don't know what's happening?
Overruled.
Yeah, in use of the word problem, because
Yes.
contamination does occur. If it's going on, you don't know about it, that is a problem.
And if it's going on and you don't know about it, you have no way of knowing how it might affect test results, Steve.
If I don't know about it, that's correct.
So if there was evidence in your laboratory of persistent contamination that you were unaware of, would you agree that'd be a serious problem?
Hypothetical argument of it's also logically impossible.
Overruled.
Would you agree that would be a serious problem?
If there was something going on that we had no idea that it was going on,
Contamination.
given that assumption that something like that could happen, that would be a problem.
Now, you were asked some questions about the computer system and the fact that it's password protected. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
And a password is a secret word that you're given if you're allowed to have access to a computer so that you can actually get it to work for you, correct?
That's correct.
And what that means is if you don't have that word, you can sit there and touch buttons all day and you're not going to be able to get into the computer, correct?
That's correct.
Now, that particular protection that you described wasn't in effect for any of the evidence in this case until the 16th of June, correct?
Vague, overbroad.
Overruled. I think we've already established the date that these things are entered into the computer, correct?
Correct. Could we take down that exhibit and Pat, did you recall yesterday you were asked about biological contamination in the context of whether having one sample contaminated with biological fluid from another sample could cause the first sample to change type. Remember that?
Yes, I think we've talked about it a couple times.
And you said that that can't happen.
In actually changing the type,
Yes.
that's my understanding, yes.
Now, when you're talking about actually changing the type, let me shift that just a little bit and ask you the same question about being able to detect. Well, let me rephrase that. The only way we have of knowing of what a type is by the test, correct?
That's correct.
Now, is it your testimony that if you have a biological sample from one person and another biological sample was added to that from a second person, that the results of the test would never change?
No, I did not say that.
Now, can we have slide, I need a number for the slide presentation.
Defense next in order,
1143.
1143A.
Now, Ms. Batson, remember yesterday we were talking about that genetic markers come from our parents, don't they?
Yes,
And we talk in the context of the EAP system of there being A's, B's, and C's, and you get one of those from each parent, correct?
that's correct.
Same thing is true with other genetic markers that are looked at in DNA testing and other conventional serology testing, correct?
Yes, concept's the same.
Each marker system has its own universe, if you will, of possible alleles, they're called, within that marker, correct?
Beyond the scope.
Overruled.
Correct.
That's correct.
And one of the marker systems that you look at in your lab is called the DQ alpha marker, which is, that just identifies a particular part of the DNA that's looked at, correct?
Yes, that's
And
true.
that's the primary test that your lab performs, isn't it?
That's one of a couple tests, yes.
And two of the alleles that happen to be in that system are called 1.1 and 1.2, aren't they?
Yes,
It's kind of the equivalent of the A's and B's and C's, correct?
This is beyond the scope.
Overruled. But move it along, Mr. Glazier. This is just to make a point.
Yes.
All right.
Correct.
Let's get there.
that's a designation, yes.
Now, if you inherit that 1.1 from your mother and 1.1 from your father, then you're going to be a 1.1, correct?
Beyond the scope.
Overruled.
Yes,
And correspondingly, if person B up there inherits a 1.2 from mom, a 1.2 from dad, that person's going to be a 1.2, correct?
yes,
Now, if you take a little bit of blood from A and a little bit of blood from B and mix it together and run a test on it, you're going to get a type 1.1, 1.2, correct?
Maybe just a little bit.
Depending on the concentrations of each, yes, you're going to see those too.
Let's assume they're approximately the same.
That's what the test would read then, yes.
And the 1.1, 1.2 type is different from either of the two types that went into it, correct?
When taken together, that's correct.
Now, would you agree that that is an example of where you could have a mixture of blood from two people that would type differently from either one that's in it?
It would change the result you see, yes, not the type of either one of them.
Okay, but all we have is the result, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you also indicated yesterday that the nature of the genetic markers that you deal with, one marker might, I think the term you used was overpower, or one might degrade, correct?
Yeah, that wasn't on direct.
Yes, it was.
Over.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, let me read your question and answer from yesterday, see if this refreshes your memory. Or let me show it to you.
It's irrelevant, but that was testimony from Google.
Instead of saying,
Yes.
do you remember your testimony from yesterday where you said A equals B? Why doesn't he just say, does A equal B?
Talking about there was, if you have this mixture that we've been talking about, if you've got part of the mixture is either degraded or you've only got a little bit, it may be overpowered by the other component, correct?
Asked and answered, yeah, Ms. Gold.
Yes.
Now, in my example, my hypothetical up there, would you agree that if person number A had been, that sample had been degraded or was only a small sample, and person number B had a lot there, and you mix them together and did a test, person number B might overwhelm person number A, correct?
Asked and answered.
Yes, that's possible.
And please, slide B. You agree that and in my hypothetical, that would result in your final test of this mixture showing person B, but not person A.
Assuming that the quantity of B was sufficiently high, yes, that could occur.
Now let's assume hypothetically that the blood from person A is put on a swatch, and the degradation simply means the little pieces of DNA are kind of breaking.
And that's it. That's
you lose
it.
the ability
Nope.
to detect them,
Nope.
correct?
Shh. Shh. We have an hour of him tomorrow. We know that because this is an hour long. We don't know what's going to happen here. We might have an hour of him left, guys. That's exciting. And then we move on to her. And she's here for a bit. They don't show. Like, we go through a minute with them not showing who's on the stand. We'll figure that out when we get there. Thank you so much for coming out today. I really, really appreciate it. I'll see you all again tomorrow. Bye, guys.